Chapter 1. Odin Town was located at the southern border of the Temple League. There were more than 3,000 households, and it was considered one of the bigger towns in Hau'u City. The sun rose, gently caressing the earth with its light and warmth. It was as if it was awakening life. At this moment, in the center of Odin Town, there was a relatively large two-story building that covered an area of about 1,000 square meters. An assessment was being conducted. "Tell me, why do you want to become knights?" A vigorous and forceful voice that sounded like metal clanging rang out. "To protect humanity, to protect kindness, to protect the temple, to protect our loved ones." The voices that answered were neat and immature. It was obvious that this was not the first time they had answered this question. This two-story building was the Knights Templars Hall in Odin Town, or Odin Hall for short. It was responsible for selecting children who had the potential to become knight in Odin Town and nurturing them. There were more than 30 children standing there today, and they were all going through the assessment to become knight attendants, the most basic title of knight. Only by becoming a rank 1 knight attendant could they continue to study and train here. The owner of the deep voice was a tall and burly middle-aged man. His name was Balza, and he was the chief instructor of knight attendants in Odin Hall. It was said that he was just a step away from becoming a true knight. "Tell me, what are the principles of a knight?" Balza looked sternly at the children who lived in Odin Town between the ages of 8 to 10. Their answers were still neat and uniform. Humility, honesty, compassion, bravery, justice, sacrifice, honor, persistence, love, and justice. Balza nodded in satisfaction. "Very good. You have been training here for a year. Today is the time for you to take the assessment. Knight attendants go from rank 1 to rank 10, and the corresponding spiritual energy is 10 to 100. Today, your mission is to reach a spiritual energy of 10 and above, and become a rank 1 knight attendant. Those who pass the assessment will continue to train here for another 3 years, and then head to Hau'u City to take the assessment to become a prospective knight. Only when you become a prospective knight like me will you be considered a true member of the Knights Templars. Start now, Jiang Hu." "Yes." A rather tall youth walked out and took out the wooden sword on his back. All the youths were equipped with the same equipment. Each of them had a wooden sword that was 3 feet long, 3 inches wide, and 2 inches thick. The knight attendant test was also very simple. There was something that looked like a wooden block in front of Balza. The wooden block was connected to a stone trough with a stone pearl in it. When hitting the wooden block, the stone bead would vibrate, and according to the height of the vibration, the spiritual power would be evaluated. It could be considered the most primitive tool for assessing spiritual power. However, it was still accurate within the range of 100 spiritual energy. Spiritual power was a universal value used to evaluate the strength of all professions in the Holy Demon Continent. Whether it was a knight, a magician, or any other profession, strength was determined by spiritual power. Generally speaking, 10 points of spiritual energy is equivalent to the strength of a normal adult male. "Ah!" Jiang Hu yelled. He held the wooden sword with both hands and swung it in a circle before smashing it against the wooden block. Pring! The stone bead bounced. Balzar nodded in satisfaction. He recorded the results on the register in his hand and said, "Jiang Hu, spiritual power 13, pass." Next. The test proceeded very quickly. In a short while, half of the people had completed it, and almost half of them had passed. Long Houchen. Balzar raised his head subconsciously when he called out the name. His gaze was locked on a skinny youth. Compared to the others, this young man was obviously malnourished. His body was thin and weak, but he had a face that made people gasp in admiration. He had naturally shaped eyebrows, big eyes, long eyelashes, a straight nose, fair skin, and moderately thick lip. Even though he looked like he was only 8 or 9 years old, he was so beautiful that women would go crazy with jealousy. Even though he had black hair, he had a pair of clear blue eyes. If he were to change into women's clothes, He would definitely be a beauty that could topple cities and countries. Long Houchen walked in front of Balzar. Unlike the others, he did not take out his wooden sword first. Instead, he clenched his right fist and placed it on his heart. He bowed and said, "Instructor." Balzar's serious gaze softened. He nodded and said, "Let's begin." Yes. After taking out his wooden sword, Long Houchen took a deep breath and swung the sword at the wooden block with all his might. The stone bead bounced with a thud. However, it was obvious that it did not exceed the 10 mark. Balzar frowned. Spiritual power 9, fail. He could tell from the extent of the wooden sword's rebound that Long Houchen had given his all. However, he still did not pass the test and become a knight attendant. Long Houchen's handsome face turned red. He looked at Balzar and said agitatedly, "Instructor, I." Balzar sighed and said, "You may leave." Long Houchen said eagerly, "Instructor, please give me another chance. I will definitely pass." Balzar frowned and said, "But this is unfair to the others who did not pass." Long Houchen fell silent, but there seemed to be something special in his eyes. Balzar noticed his gaze. At that moment, the knight attendant was stunned. What was that? Persistence? Persistence, one of the 10 rules of a knight? The 10 rules of a knight were also the 10 spirits of a knight. Even some real knight attendants might not be able to see any of the 10 rules, but this kid in front of him. It was also at this moment that Long Houchen turned around and faced all the youths present. He knelt on the ground with a thud and spoke in an extremely sincere voice to his comrades who had trained with him for a year. "I beg of you, please give me another chance." As he spoke, he actually knelt down. Balzar was stunned, and so were the youths. They were only 8 or 9 years old, and the oldest was no more than 11 years old. They did not understand why Long Houchen was so persistent. To most of the youths, it did not matter whether they became a knight attendant or not. There was something in Balzar's eyes. If it had been any other child, he might have thought that this child was eager for quick success or was a coward. However, this was not the case for Long Houchen. This was because, although this handsome youth looked thin and weak, he was the most hard-working one in the past year of training. Not only did he complete his daily training, but he would also arrive 2 hours earlier and leave 2 hours later every morning. Balzar was a level 10 knight attendant, and he had been an instructor in Odin Town for 10 years. However, Long Houchen was the most hard-working student he had ever seen. This youth never needed supervision. Not only did he train hard every day, but he was also very gentle and nice to everyone. When his peers asked him for help, he never refused. This was why Balzar's gaze became gentle when it was Long Houchen's turn to be assessed. He was also shocked that Long Houchen did not pass the assessment. The only explanation for why such a hard-working child could not pass the assessment was that his aptitude was too poor. "Instructor, let him take the assessment again." The one who spoke was the first to pass the assessment. He was also the oldest among the group of children, Jiang Hu. "Yes. Instructor, give Long Houchen another chance." "Instructor, Long Houchen trains hard every day. Let him try again." For a time, the voices of pleading for Long Houchen rang out from the mouths of almost every youth. This was the kind of relationship that people had accumulated for good. Moreover, they were just a group of children. They were far from being related to benefit. Balzar said in a low voice, "Silence." The spacious hall immediately became quiet. Balzar said, "All right, I will give him another chance. However, for the sake of fairness, Long Houchen, you must first defeat Jiang Hu in a one-on-one battle to get this chance. The same goes for all of you who failed. I will give anyone who defeats Jiang Hu a chance to take the assessment again, but only within 3 days." Long Houchen was overjoyed. He thanked his teammates again, then turned to Balzar. "Thank you, instructor." Looking at Li Du's face that was full of sunshine and pure smile, even a man like Balzar could not help but be slightly stunned. Ignoring Long Houchen, Balzar looked at Jiang Hu and said calmly, do your best. Otherwise, I will revoke your title as a knight attendant. Do you understand? Yes. Jiang Hu replied and drew the wooden sword from his back. The other youths spread out to create an empty space. Be careful, Long Haochen. I will not go easy on you. Jiang Hu kept the wooden sword in front of him and gave Long Haochen a knight's salute. Long Haochen returned the salute. Brother Jiang, please. Jiang Hu bellowed and charged forward. The wooden sword in his hand was aimed at Long Haochen's left shoulder. Long Haochen was very quiet. It seemed like his movements were a beat slower. He only moved when Jiang Hu's wooden sword was halfway to his shoulder. He raised the wooden sword in his hand and swept it at the bottom of Jiang Hu's blade. Duo! A soft sound rang out. Jiang Hu's spiritual power was obviously greater than Long Haochen's, but Long Haochen's sword was deflected. There was a flash of surprise in Instructor Balz's eyes when he saw the sword. Although Jiang Hu's wooden sword was deflected, he reacted quickly. He used the momentum to spin his body, using the strength of his waist and back to move his arm. The wooden sword in his hand spun in a circle, then slashed horizontally. Jiang Hu's reaction was spectacular. It was quite impressive for him to be able to do that at his age. However, Long Haochen's reaction was even more shocking. When he deflected Jiang Hu's attack with his sword, he had already moved forward. The distance between the two of them was very close to begin with, so when he moved forward, he was already next to Jiang Hu. This was the moment when Jiang Hu's body was spinning. How was he going to attack? Balzar was also puzzled. The wooden sword was 3 feet long, and Long Haochen was already close to him. He would definitely not be able to use it. However, at this moment, Long Haochen had already attacked. He was using the hilt of the sword. He lowered his body and raised the hilt of the sword at the same time, right below Jiang Hu's ribs. Long Haochen did not even use any force in this attack, but Jiang Hu's body had already been pushed back. Jiang Hu's sweeping wooden sword also swept past the top of Long Haochen's head. Stop! Balzar shouted. A glint flashed in Balzar's eyes. He said in a low voice, "You lost your balance and used the same technique. Jiang Hu, you've lost. If Long Haochen had used more force in his sword hilt, you would have been lying on the ground." Jiang Hu scratched his head awkwardly. Long Haochen, you're really cunning. Long Haochen sheathed his sword and stood up. He looked apologetically at Jiang Hu, who had just regained his balance after much difficulty. Balzar nodded at Long Haochen and said, "You can attempt the second assessment." Long Haochen's expression had clearly become solemn as he returned to the front of the wooden pillar. Such an expression appearing on the face of a youth like him really gave off an unusual feeling. Holding the wooden sword tightly with both hands, the determination in Long Haochen's eyes became stronger. It was as if there was a faint halo around his body. Especially his eyes, those clear blue eyes, which were filled with determination. Suddenly, Long Haochen spun around and swung the wooden sword in his hand with a determination that far surpassed his peers. Bang! The stone bead bounced, and Long Haochen took a step back due to the recoil. He almost dropped the wooden sword in his hand. It was clear that there was blood seeping out of the webbing between his thumb and forefinger. Spiritual power level 11. Pass, Balzar said in shock. Going from a spiritual power level 9 to a spiritual power level 11 sounded like a difference of 2. However, in the previous assessment, Long Haochen had clearly used all his strength. To be able to produce such a huge increase meant that he had stimulated his potential to the limit. After a brief moment of shock, Balzar returned to normal. He asked Long Haochen to go to the infirmary to bandage his wounds before continuing with the assessment. The assessment has ended. Those who did not pass do not need to come tomorrow. Those who passed will be assigned to a new instructor tomorrow. You are dismissed now. You can go home after collecting the vitality fluid. Thank you, instructor, the youths shouted in unison. Long Haochen, stay for a while. The youths cheered and left, regardless of whether they passed or not. At this age, it was easy for them to find happiness and happiness. Only Long Houchen and Instructor Balzar were left in the spacious hall of the Odin Temple. Long Houchen, tell me, why did you choose to attack that way during the battle with Jiang Hu? Balzar asked solemnly. Long Houchen answered without hesitation, because my strength was not as good as brother Jiang Hu, so I could only look for his flaws. You taught us that when we slash, the strongest force comes from the tip of the sword. The closer it is to the hilt, the weaker the force. When he attacked for the second time, I noticed that his waist was where his center of gravity was, so I stayed close to his body so that he could not use his full strength. Once his center of gravity was broken, he could not continue attacking. Balzar's eyes were filled with surprise. In other words, you learned all of this through observation? He had never taught these children how to fight because the most important thing at their age was to build their foundation. It was not the time for them to learn how to fight. However, Long Houchen's calmness and accurate grasp of timing during the battle shocked him. All right, you can go home now. Balzar waved his hand. He could vaguely feel that this child had a potential that other youths did not have. Instructor, my cultivating liquid for this week. Long Houchen's pretty face showed a bit of shyness as he asked tentatively. Oh, go and collect it. Goodbye, instructor. Long Houchen left in high spirits. Balzar could not help but smile as he watched him leave. This child is pure and hard-working. He seems to be talented in fighting. He is a rare talent. Do you know why he can find his opponent's flaws so easily? A clear and melodious voice was heard beside Balzar. The voice came without warning, and it gave Balzar a shock. A middle-aged man had appeared beside Balza. He looked to be in his 30s and was dressed in a simple robe. However, he had a pair of eyes that were as dazzling as the stars. Deep in his eyes, there was a look of disappointment and reminiscence. There was even a tinge of pain in his eyes. Sir, I don't know. Balzar quickly bowed to the middle-aged man when he saw him. The middle-aged man had just arrived at the Odin Palace a few days ago. Balzar could not confirm the middle-aged man's identity and level of cultivation. He only knew that he was an important figure from the Knight Templar's palace in Hau'u City. The middle-aged man retracted his gaze and said calmly, "That's because he has extraordinary mental strength. Otherwise, why do you think he could unleash that kind of potential?" Long Houchen was very happy. He held the small glass bottle in his hand carefully and ran in the direction of his home in high spirit. To other children, the liquid in the bottle was just an unpleasant potion, but to him it was the reason why he joined the Knights Templars. As he walked, he muttered to himself, "Brother Jiang Hu was right. This vitality fluid is good stuff. Ever since I drank 1 bottle a week, my body has been much better. Mom, I'm sorry. Although you taught me that men should not kneel, if I don't pass the test today, I won't be able to bring back the vitality fluid for you. I don't want to lose you. I'm willing to do anything for you." If Balzar had heard what Long Houchen said, he would have widened his eyes in shock. The vitality fluid was a type of medicine distributed by the Knights Templars. It had a strengthening effect on children below the age of 15. It was used to aid in their training and build a good foundation for their bodies. Long Houchen almost didn't pass the test today because he had never drunk the essence cultivation fluid before. He had left it all to his mother. A year ago, he was just a very thin and weak little boy. Today, a year later, through his own unremitting efforts and the support of his determination to let his mother drink the primordial elixir, he broke through the barrier of 10 points of spiritual power. For a child who was only 9 years old, the difficulty was even more difficult than the checkpoint of the prospective knight assessment to become a knight. What kind of talent and hard work were needed to achieve this? The sun shone on Long Houchen, and it shone like gold, just like his heart of gold. Long Houchen's house was located in a remote corner on the west side of Odin Town. He even had to cross a small river to reach it. Soon, he walked across the wooden bridge on the river. However, he did not go home directly. Instead, he followed a small path and walked into the forest on the west side of Odin Town. Every time he gave the vitality fluid to his mother, he would first pick some wild vegetables and then mix the liquid with the strong taste of the wild vegetable soup so that his mother could not taste it. He did not want his mother to know about this. Long Houchen still clearly remembered that Instructor Balza had taught them that a man should bear everything. Walking into the forest, he quickly got busy. All these years, Long Houchen and his mother depended on each other. Even in Odin Town, their family was the poorest. The children of the poor took charge of the family early. While many children of the same age only knew how to play every day, he could help his mother share some of the burden. Although the mother and son only relied on his mother by use meager income from cutting clothes for people every day, he always felt very happy. After a while, there was a lot of wild vegetables piled up on the ground. Long Houchen was too familiar with them. Although they were just wild vegetables, the taste was not bad. He had eaten these things since he was a child. Just as Long Houchen was about to pack up the wild vegetables he had picked and go home, a soft sound suddenly startled him. This forest was not peaceful, and there would occasionally be some wild beasts. Long Houchen looked up in the direction of the sound and vaguely saw a petite figure that seemed to have fallen. Driven by curiosity, he walked over carefully. After a few steps, he saw that the person who had fallen in the forest was not a wild beast at all, but a little girl. The little girl looked to be only 7 or 8 years old. Her figure was very delicate and she had a head of light purple short hair. Her clothes were torn in many places, and at least 6 or 7 places had blood seeping out. Although she had fallen to the ground, she was still conscious. She was struggling to get up, but it seemed very difficult. Long Houchen quickly stepped forward and supported her. He asked in surprise, "What's wrong with you?" The little girl seemed to be shocked as well. Her body moved subconsciously, and she turned her head to look at him. At this moment, Long Houchen could see the little girl's appearance clearly. Her beautiful little face was stained with a lot of dirt, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. Although she looked very miserable, she still easily gave people a breathtaking feeling. But her beauty was different from Long Houchen's. Long Houchen's eyes were very gentle, and it was easy to feel close to him. Although this girl was young, her eyes were full of stubbornness and coldness. Suddenly looking into her eyes, Long Houchen could not help but shiver. Seeing Long Houchen, the little girl also seemed to be shocked, but she did not know if it was because Long Houchen was strong enough, but she quickly calmed down. "Are you okay?" Long Houchen asked again. The little girl raised a hand with difficulty and wrote a line on the ground. "I can't speak. There are bad people chasing me, and they will be here soon. Sister, save me." Looking at the first few words, Long Houchen was shocked, but when he saw the last few words, he could not help but have a few black lines appear on his forehead. "I'm the big brother, not the big sister." After a gloomy explanation, driven by compassion, he picked up the little girl. After all, he had passed the test of the attendant knight, and his strength was comparable to that of an adult. This little girl's weight was especially light, and he did not feel any weight at all when carrying her. After carrying her, Long Houchen returned to the wild vegetables that he had picked, and used a straw rope to tie the wild vegetables. At this time, the little girl anxiously pulled on his clothes. Long Houchen was stunned for a moment, and quickly put her on the ground. The little girl quickly wrote on the ground, "I feel their breath, they will be here soon. They can smell my scent, you should go quickly, or it will be too late." Long Houchen frowned slightly, and resolutely shook his head. "No, I am a man, I have to protect you." Even though he was only 9 years old, when he said these words, it caused his beautiful little face to have a hint of determination. "Scent." Long Houchen's eyes moved slightly, and he quickly took out a few wild vegetables, crushed them with his hands, and quickly smeared them on the little girl and himself. Then, he carried her to the bushes at the side, and carefully placed her in the bushes. Then, he laid down on the bushes, using his elbows to support his body. He did not touch the little girl, but used his body to completely cover her. He did not notice that, while he was doing this, the little girl under his protection was staring at him with a strange gaze, but she was very quiet and did not move. Just as Long Houchen hid, he heard a series of whooshing sounds outside. Peeping out from the gaps in the bushes, he saw a group of men in black. These men in black were very tall, and there was a faint smell of blood coming from them. A few of them were breathing hard. Why did the smell stop here? Could it be that the little girl was saved by someone? A hoarse and unpleasant voice echoed in the forest. With the sunlight shining through the shadows of the trees, Long Houchen clearly saw the appearance of one of the men in black, and he almost cried out in alarm. This was because the man's face was covered with black hair, and his yellow eyes looked especially fierce. His nose was constantly twitching, sniffing the air. At this moment, a cold voice rang out in the forest. "Stop here, since you have chased all the way here, there is no need to go back." A crystal-clear light quietly appeared in the air, and with a beautiful arc, it quickly flashed a few times in the forest like lightning. The 7 or 8 men in black who had chased after him all froze in place, and in the next moment they all fell to the ground. Long Houchen only saw a blur in front of him, and a masked man in white suddenly appeared not far in front of him. Then, a shocking scene appeared in his field of vision. He didn't see how the man in white moved, but from his chest, thousands of light spots spurted out. In an instant it was as if the whole forest was lit up because of this light. Long Houchen couldn't open his eyes. When he saw everything in front of him again, he was shocked to find that the men in black who had fallen on the ground had all disappeared, leaving only the man in white standing there quietly. All of this happened too quickly. It was only a blur before Long Houchen's eyes before everything was settled. It was as if those ferocious-looking people had never appeared. The man in white slowly turned around, looked in the direction of Long Houchen and the mute girl, and said lightly, "Come out." Long Houchen's heart tightened. Obviously, the other party had found him. At the same time, he also saw the eyes of the man in white. It was a pair of emotionless eyes. His eyes were black, but his pupils seemed to be gray. His black shoulder-length hair was simply tied behind his head, and his simple white clothes did not have any decorations. The strength of the man in white made Long Houchen's heart tremble. After all, he was only 9 years old. But, when he looked down and saw the pale face of the mute girl, he suddenly felt a surge of hot blood, and it turned into courage. First, he gently shook his head at the little girl, indicating that she should not make a sound. Then, he used both hands to push off the ground and jumped out of the bushes. At the same time, he pulled out the wooden sword on his back. The man in white stood there without moving, but even so, Long Houchen could instinctively feel that the man in front of him was more dangerous than the most powerful beast he had ever seen. Long Houchen didn't say anything, he just held the wooden sword with both hands and firmly stared at the man in white in front of him. Right now, he only hoped that the man in white in front of him didn't find the mute girl. "We should go back." The voice of the man in white did not have any color of emotion. These few simple words made Long Houchen feel a chill, as if ice and snow had seeped into his body. It was also at this time, with a whoosh, a petite figure appeared in front of Long Houchen. He was surprised to find that the figure that he couldn't see clearly was actually the mute girl that he was protecting before. Her speed was so fast. Long Houchen was stunned. The mute girl opened her arms, using her thin and weak body to block in front of Long Houchen. Her eyes firmly and stubbornly stared at the man in white in front of her, and forcefully shook her head at him. The man in white's emotionless eyes seemed to move, and the next moment, his body also moved, like an elegant white light flashing. And in front of Long Houchen, the mute girl also moved, and her speed was also very fast. Long Houchen's observation was far better than his peers', but he could only see that there seemed to be a short dagger in the mute girl's hand, and when her body rushed forward, she made a few irregular movements, like a fierce little tiger. Just that speed alone, perhaps only those with a spiritual power of 20 or above could have it, right? Unfortunately, there was obviously a huge gap between the mute girl and the man in white. In just a breath's time, everything became quiet. The dagger in the mute girl's hand disappeared, and her whole body was also clamped under the armpit of the man in white. As for how the man in white did it, Long Houchen didn't see clearly at all. "Let her go!" Long Houchen shouted, and with a very standard knight step, the wooden sword in his hand slashed towards the man in white. At this time, he simply forgot how terrifying the man in front of him was, and in his heart, he only wanted to save the mute girl. A huge force came, and Long Houchen and his wooden sword instantly rolled down, and his consciousness instantly fell into darkness. And the man in white just raised his hand. The mute girl who was clamped under the armpit struggled violently, and the man in white was suddenly surprised, because he suddenly felt that the little girl under his armpit began to emit a burning temperature, and a layer of dark red light began to appear from under her skin. "Be quiet, I won't hurt him." The man in white's voice finally had a few more human emotions, it seemed to be helpless. The mute girl stopped struggling, and looked up at the man in white. The man in white nodded to her, took a step forward, and arrived in front of Long Houchen, squatted down, and used one hand to search Long Houchen's body. Even that beautiful little face was not spared. After a moment, the man in white slowly frowned. "Aptitude is above average, but the bone development is insufficient. His temperament and aptitude are more suitable to be a knight." While speaking, he had already let go of the mute girl. The mute girl quickly made a few hand gestures to him. The man in white said, "His future achievements? Hard to say. From an aptitude point of view, being able to become an Earth Knight is already the limit. However, he is only 8 or 9 years old, and already has the 4 major knight principles of compassion, bravery, persistence, and sacrifice. These 4 qualities. His future achievements are limitless. An outstanding knight, especially a guardian knight, often has higher requirements for temperament than aptitude." The mute girl pointed at herself, then pointed at Long Houchen, and then made a few more hand gestures. The man in white nodded and said, "Well, his courage just now is indeed enough to receive this reward." A ball of white light quietly shone from the man in white's chest. One could faintly see that the white light was in the shape of a small furnace. In the furnace there was a faint green flame flickering. The man in white stretched out his right index and middle finger, and lightly wiped the green flame, then quickly landed on Long Houchen's body, using a wipe incantation, brought out a green flame. After a moment, the green and white light converged together, and entered the man in white's body, but his eyes clearly showed some exhaustion. "Well, I used the power of the spiritual furnace to help him sort out the 12 standard meridians, burning away the impurities in the 12 standard meridians. At least let his potential increase by a level. Your trial this time is also over, let's go back." While speaking, the man in white slowly stood up and waved to the mute girl. But the mute girl quickly walked in front of Long Houchen, took off a blue ring with a golden forget-me-not pattern from her hand, and put it on the middle finger of Long Houchen's left hand. Strangely, when the small ring was on Long Houchen's finger, it automatically expanded a bit, and completely stuck to his finger. "Kair you," the man in white whispered in surprise. But what he received was the stubborn and persistent gaze of the mute girl. She tidied up the wild vegetables that Long Houchen had picked before, and put them beside him, then returned to the side of the man in white. The man in white frowned, and after a long silence, he slowly nodded, took the mute girl's hand, soared up, and disappeared into the depths of the forest. Chapter 2. Long Houchen slowly woke up from his coma and blinked his eyes. His long eyelashes, which were enough to make any girl envious and jealous, fluttered twice before he gradually came back to his senses. He suddenly turned over and sat up from the ground. "I'm fine?" Looking at his unscathed body, he couldn't help but feel relieved. It was quiet all around, and there were only some sounds of insects and birds in the wood. Looking down, Long Houchen saw the wild vegetables neatly placed beside him at a glance. He was stunned for a moment and rubbed his temples. Did I just fall asleep and everything was just a dream? Hey, what is this? He saw at a glance that there was an extra ring on the hand that was rubbing his temples. The blue ring exuded a glossy luster, not a metallic luster, but a kind of porcelain-like luster. A pale gold forget-me-not pattern surrounded the ring, and a transparent gem the size of a rice grain was inlaid on it. The gem was completely inlaid in the ring, and one could only feel the smooth surface of the ring when touching it. The inner ring of the ring was gold, and the place close to the finger was slightly protruding, but there was no feeling when wearing it on the hand. Long Houchen was stunned, and he immediately realized that everything that happened before he fainted was real. But it was also because of this that his mind was full of questions. What was the relationship between the little mute girl and the man in white? Also, how did the man in white make those ferocious-looking pursuers disappear? Who gave this ring to him? For Long Houchen, who was only 9 years old, these questions were obviously a bit complicated, and he couldn't get the answer at all. He turned over and stood up, subconsciously looking at the place where those pursuers disappeared. He suddenly found something wrong. Stepping forward quickly, Long Houchen saw that all the grass on the ground, which was originally full of grass, had disappeared and turned into a piece of land. The land had obviously sunk a bit, and the grass on the outermost edge had some scorched marks. It was the same color as the land that had lost the grass. Forget it, don't think about it. I'd better hurry home and cook some wild vegetable soup for my mother. Long Houchen touched his arms, and when he found that the elixir was still there, he suddenly felt a lot more at ease. He picked up the wooden sword beside him and walked back home. However, as soon as the wooden sword entered his hand, he stopped in his tracks. This was because he discovered a miraculous phenomenon. His own wooden sword seemed to have become lighter, as light as a feather, as light as a feather. Although the wooden sword in his hand was not the heavy sword used by the knight and was made of wood, it was still a solid piece of hardwood, weighing at least 7 to 8 pounds. When he first joined the Odin temple, he had to practice for more than a month before he could wield the sword steadily with both hands. The wooden sword became lighter? No, it still looked the same. Could it be that my strength has increased? While thinking, Long Houchen gripped his sword with both hands and made a sprinting motion. The wooden sword in his hand slashed forward. Suddenly, a whining sound rang out. The strength of the sword had truly shocked him. His hands, on the other hand, were rather steady. He could clearly feel that his limbs and bones were filled with an inexhaustible amount of energy. After bouncing a few times, it felt as if its body had become as light as the wooden sword. This was at least a spiritual power of 20, right? Long Houchen couldn't help but think of the little mute girl's cold and stubborn face again. He murmured, "Did you bring this to me? Tomorrow I will go to the Sun Temple and test how much spiritual power I have. Anyway, the wooden stake to measure spiritual power is always there." The young man's heart wasn't too complicated. Although today's events brought some troubles to Long Houchen, he thought of his mother drinking the elixir to nourish her body, so he put it all behind him. After all, the little mute girl was just a passer-by. He just secretly prayed for her, hoping that she would be safe. A small courtyard, 2 thatched houses, a few shelves with melon vines, and some dried vegetables. This was Long Houchen's home. "Mom, I'm back." The door of the thatched house opened, and a woman with a hairpin and plain clothes came out of the house. Looking at Long Houchen, who excitedly ran back from outside, she suddenly revealed a trace of a smile. She was Long Houchen's mother, Bai. Long Houchen's appearance was almost carved from the same mold as her. Although Bai wore plain clothes and had experienced a lot of hardships, her stunning appearance could still bring a strong shock to anyone. The only difference between her and Long Houchen was the color of her eyes. Her eyes were black, while Long Houchen's eyes were clear blue. However, it was also because of this beauty that made the life of the mother and son even more difficult. Because of this beauty, Bai Yu, who was alone with her son, didn't know how many times she had been harassed. Although she solved them one by one, how could she live like that? In desperation, even if she came to Odin Town, she could only build her home in the most remote corner. His daily life depended on washing clothes in a laundry that was full of women to earn a meager income. Chen, you're back. How was today's exam? Bai Yu smiled as she hugged her son, who ran in excitedly into her arms. She was very tall, and Long Houchen, who was only 9 years old, only came up to her chest. Feeling the softness and fresh smell of his mother's body, Long Houchen said excitedly, "Mom, I passed." Bai Yu smiled slightly and said, "I knew Chen was the best. Go and wash up, Mom will make lunch for you." Long Houchen jumped out of his mother's arms. "I'll do it. I've picked some wild vegetables, I'll make some soup for you." As he spoke, he went straight to the smaller thatched house next to him. When he reached the door of the thatched house, he couldn't help but look back at his mother. He didn't know why, but he felt that his mother seemed to be very happy today. One had to know that his mother rarely spoke, let alone praised him. Most of the time, he would see his mother in a daze alone. She would only show some gentleness when she was with him, but she rarely spoke. Bai Yu watched her son walk into the kitchen and murmured, "Chen, it's been hard on you." But she sighed softly, and there was a hint of struggle in her eyes, but in the end she still suppressed the impulse in her heart. The night was uneventful. Early the next morning, after Long Houchen woke up and ate breakfast made by his mother, he went to the Odin Palace. After he fell asleep last night, the scenes that happened during the day appeared in his dream again, as if he also dreamed of the scene when the mute girl put the ring on his finger. So much so that he couldn't wait to test the level of his spiritual power when he woke up in the morning. Because he came especially early, when Long Houchen entered the Odin Palace, the others were not there yet. There was nothing precious in the Odin Palace, so there was no need for anyone to guard it. What's more, Instructor Balza, who was a prospective knight, lived in the back. Long Houchen walked quickly to the wooden stump from yesterday's assessment and took off the wooden sword on his back. He deliberately came early today to prove whether his guess was correct, to test his spiritual power. Slowly raising the wooden sword, Long Houchen focused his mind. With his feet in front and one behind, he took a deep breath and slashed with all his might with the wooden sword in his hand. Poof, kacha, bang, 3 different sounds appeared almost one after another, but the difference between them was particularly obvious. The first sound was naturally the sound of the wooden sword hitting the wooden stump, and the second sound was the sound of the wooden sword breaking. Yes, the wooden sword could not withstand Long Houchen's slash and broke in the middle. Fortunately, it did not break completely, so he did not hurt himself. The last sound was the sound of the stone beads falling back. Long Houchen, who was still in the slashing motion, could clearly see that the highest position it bounced up to was 25. Is this real? It was true. The broken wooden sword had proved it. Balzar once told them that the wooden swords they used could only withstand up to 20 points of spiritual energy. Although Long Houchen did not have much of a concept of becoming a knight, he was still surprised that he could advance from a rank 1 Connect Knight to a rank 2 Knight overnight. A soft snort woke Long Houchen from his stupor. He subconsciously turned his head, and was shocked to find that a middle-aged man had appeared behind him without him noticing. Although Long Houchen was shocked, he was not afraid. He curiously looked at the middle-aged man in front of him. The middle-aged man was tall and slender, with black hair and black eyes. He was dignified and his eyes were especially bright. Handsome was not the word to describe him. Majestic was more suitable. Long Houchen could feel an invisible pressure emanating from him. He was dressed in simple clothes and had a cold expression on his face. He was like a towering mountain whose peak could not be seen. After a short moment of surprise, the middle-aged man quickly returned to normal. He frowned slightly and looked at Long Houchen. "Who are you?" Long Houchen asked curiously. The middle-aged man said faintly, "You passed the Squire Knight test yesterday. From today onwards, I will be your new instructor. You can call me Teacher Xingyu." Long Houchen hesitated. "But I have never seen you before." Xingyu said faintly, "You are Long Houchen, 9 years old this year, and your mother is Bai Yu. Am I right?" Long Houchen nodded. Xingyu's gaze suddenly became solemn. "Let's wait for Balza to come." As he spoke, he did not say anything else. He just looked in a direction and moved his lips a few times. In just a short while there was the sound of hurried footsteps. Long Houchen saw Balza running over, his face full of shock and respect. "Hello, instructor." Long Houchen saw Balza and immediately gave him a knight's salute. But surprisingly, Balza did not return the salute as he usually did. Instead, he quickly walked in front of Xingyu and said respectfully, "Sir." Xingyu nodded. "Tell him that I am his new instructor." "Yes." Balza hurriedly said to Long Houchen, "Sir Xingyu is from the Knight Division of Haoyue City. From today onwards, he will be your knight instructor for the next 3 years. You must listen to Sir Xingyu. Sir Xingyu is a true knight." Long Houchen agreed obediently. In fact, he did not even know the difference between a prospective knight and a true knight. But since he was a new instructor, he just had to train with him. "Sir Xingyu." As he thought about it, he greeted Xingyu obediently. Compared to his peers, his mind was indeed more mature and steady. Let's go," Xingyu said as he naturally pulled Long Houchen's hand and walked out. But before he took a step, his gaze swept past Long Houchen's pretty little face, and a hint of disappointment flashed in his eyes. Xingyu's hand was very big, with long fingers and thick palms. It almost covered Long Houchen's hand. Warmth and safety were all that Long Houchen felt. "Sir Xingyu, are we not training here?" Long Houchen could not help but ask after they left Odin's palace. Xingyu said, "This place is not suitable." Sensing the coldness in Xingyu's tone, Long Houchen was very sensible and did not ask any more questions. Balza watched their backs as they left, and he muttered to himself in surprise, "I wonder who this sir is. Was that a voice transmission just now? Only an Earth Knight would have such an ability. No, maybe it's a Radiance Knight? Oh my god!" Xingyu led Long Houchen out of Odin town. As soon as they left the town, Long Houchen suddenly felt a warm, thick, and enormous energy coming from Long Xingwu's hand. The next moment, a strange scene that was like riding on clouds appeared. Every time Xingyu's toes touched the ground lightly, he would bring Long Houchen forward at least 30 meters. In just a few breaths, Odin town was already far behind them. To Long Houchen, this kind of speed was as fast as lightning. All he could do was hold on to Xingyu's hand tightly, afraid that he would fall out. Soon, they passed through the forest where Long Houchen had picked wild vegetables yesterday and climbed a mountain behind the forest. Long Houchen was very familiar with this place. After all, he had grown up here. This mountain was called Odin Mountain by the people of Odin town. However, there were often wild beasts in the mountain and the forest they had passed through before. There were even magical beasts, so very few people came here. He had also been to the foot of Odin Mountain once half a year ago, driven by curiosity. There, he had seen an unknown wild beast and fled in fear. Since then, Long Houchen had never gone deep into the forest, let alone into Odin Mountain. "Sir, there are wild beasts here, and there might even be magical beasts," Long Houchen kindly reminded. Xingyu didn't seem to hear him at all. Instead, he sped up and led him up Odin Mountain. Even as they climbed the mountain, he didn't slow down. The surrounding scenery passed by quickly on both sides, and the strong wind blew Long Houchen's hair into a mess. Odin wasn't very tall, only about 2,000 feet. In just a short while, they arrived at the top of the mountain. 3 small wooden houses appeared in Xingyu's sight. There were no courtyards, just 3 lonely wooden houses. Looking at the freshness of the wood, it was clear that they had been built not long ago. Xingyu stopped in front of the wooden houses, and led Long Haochen into the largest one in the middle. He pushed the door open and entered. A faint smell of wood wafted out from the wooden house. It was not unpleasant, but rather had a faint fragrance. The middle wooden house was the largest, but it only had the simplest furnishings. There was a wooden bed without bedding, a wooden table, and 2 wooden chairs. It was that simple, even more so than Long Haochen's house. "Sit." Xingyu pointed at the chairs, and pulled one out for himself. Long Haochen sat down obediently. Although he was young and didn't know much, he could feel that his teacher was very powerful. In the midst of his nervousness, there was also some excitement. "First, tell me what happened to you yesterday? Why did your spiritual power double?" Xingyu asked calmly. His face was expressionless, but his words brought some invisible pressure to Long Haochen. "It was like this yesterday." Long Haochen didn't feel that he had anything to hide, so he told him everything that happened the day before. Listening to him, Xingyu only frowned once throughout the whole process, and didn't say anything else. "Sir, do you think that little girl will be all right?" Long Haochen couldn't help but ask after he finished. Xingyu shook his head and said, "She'll be fine. She and the man in white should be together. They both belong to the Temple of Assassins." "Temple of Assassins?" Long Haochen's eyes were filled with curiosity. Xingyu pulled up his hand with the ring and said to himself, "Could this be a spatial ring?" As he spoke, his finger seemed to suddenly flash. When his fingertip touched the forget-me-not ring, it immediately caused a circle of light blue light. A hint of surprise flashed through Xingyu's eyes, and he said to Long Haochen, "You're very lucky. This should be left for you by that little girl. It's worth a lot." "A forget-me-not? That little girl is a bit interesting." Long Haochen scratched his head. His pretty little face was still filled with confusion. He didn't quite understand what his teacher was saying. "Sir, do you know what method that man in white used to make those sinister-looking bad guys disappear?" Xingyu smiled faintly. "Because he killed those people and used the Temple of Assassins' exclusive 1,000-strike spiritual cauldron to grind them into powder. Then he used the 1,000-strike spiritual cauldron's green flames to burn them into ashes, leaving not a trace. The increase in your spiritual power is also the effect of the 1,000-strike spiritual cauldron. It helped you clear your 12 main meridians and burned away all the impurities in them. It can be said that it completely changed your body. This is not a small favor, you must remember it. If there's a chance in the future, you must return it to him. You can't owe him such a favor, unless—" He didn't finish his sentence. Long Haochen didn't mind, because he found something more interesting in Xingyu's words. "Sir, what is the 1,000-strike spiritual cauldron? Is it that white light?" Xingyu nodded and said, "You can say that. Simply put, a spiritual cauldron is a furnace for spiritual power, but it's ever-changing. Every spiritual cauldron is an exclusive existence. Right now, you haven't reached the level where you need to learn about spiritual cauldrons. I can only tell you that spiritual cauldrons are rare. People with spiritual cauldrons may not become strong, but people without spiritual cauldrons will definitely not be able to stand at the peak." Oh! After hearing his words, Long Haochen suddenly had some longing in his heart. If he could have a spiritual cauldron in the future, what would it be like? Looking at the forget-me-not ring in his hand, he couldn't help but think of the little girl from that day. Xingyu said, "I've already asked Barza to inform your family that you are allowed to go home once a week. The rest of the time, you have to stay here and cultivate with me." Long Haochen was shocked and asked eagerly, "Sir, can you still give me that vitality elixir?" Xingyu nodded and said, "I will give it to you every time before you go home. If you perform well, I will even give you a few better medicines that are very beneficial to anyone's body." On the other hand, if you can't complete my requirements during your cultivation, then I will kick you out of the mountain. You will no longer be a servant of the Knights Templars, and you won't even be able to get the vitality elixir. Do you understand?" As he said this, Xingyu's eyes flashed with a hint of deep meaning and even a hint of guilt. However, he hid it very well, and Long Houchen couldn't see it at all. At this moment, little Long Houchen heard Xingyu's words and immediately nodded. His eyes were filled with determination and persistence. For his mother's body, he must work hard to complete the cultivation that his teacher taught him. Moreover, his teacher was teaching him for his own good. Xingyu nodded with satisfaction and said, "From today onwards, I will teach you all kinds of knowledge in the morning and guide you in your cultivation in the afternoon and evening. You must remember the knowledge I teach you. If you forget even a little, I will deduct a week's supply of vitality elixir." He clearly knew where Long Houchen's Achilles' heel was. A simple reminder was enough to frighten the little guy into nodding repeatedly. Xingyu said, "Tell me what you know about the Temple League." Long Houchen said, "Instructor Balza taught us that the Temple League is an alliance formed by the Knights Templars, the Temple of Warriors, the Temple of Assassins, the Magic Temple, the Temple of the Priests, and the Temple of Souls. The 6 temples work together to protect the last territory of us humans." Xingyu nodded and said, "You are right, but this is only the most basic explanation. In ancient times 13,000 years ago, we humans gradually gained control of the Holy Demon continent from the ancient primitive races, and the primitive races gradually declined. Following that, dozens of human countries appeared on the continent, ruling the continent and making us humans the masters of the Holy Demon continent. Each country worked hard to develop industry and agriculture, and taught people knowledge. During that period of time, we humans developed the fastest. People lived and worked in peace, and the continent was prosperous. Peace lasted for a long time, and wars began. The original dozens of countries continued to annex each other in the war, and gradually formed a situation where 3 big countries stood on the same footing. None of the 3 big countries dared to act rashly, and maintained the balanced situation for thousands of years. We call these 7,000 years the glorious era of us humans. Until 6,000 years ago, when the glorious era was destroyed by the arrival of the demons. At this point, Xingyu's eyes revealed the hatred and loathing from the bottom of his heart. The sun and moon appeared together, and the 9 stars aligned. A huge space-time crack that seemed to split the sky appeared in the eastern sky of the continent. The 72 demon god pillars descended from the sky, bringing with them a pestilential demonic aura. In the first 100 days of the 72 demon god pillars' descent, all living creatures, whether they were wild beasts, magical beasts, or humans, once they came into contact with the aura emitted by the 72 demon god pillars, they would immediately undergo a huge mutation and mutate into demons. They would listen to the commands of the demon god pillars. In just a short 100 days, the 72 demon god pillars added millions of troops to the demons. Fortunately, the demonic aura emitted by the demon god pillars only lasted for those 100 days. Otherwise, I'm afraid we humans would have gone extinct. Long Houchen was just a teenager, and to him, he didn't feel too much responsibility yet. Listening to Xingyu's narration, it was like listening to a story. However, he didn't forget Xingyu's threat from before, and kept it in mind as he listened. Each of the 72 demon god pillars was guarded by a real demon, and they called themselves the 72 demon god pillars. They were ranked according to their strength. They led the infected demon army to launch a destructive attack on us humans. From the day the 72 demon god pillars descended, we humans also entered the Age of Darkness. Until now, after 6,000 years of conflict, all the human countries have been destroyed. Even though we accumulated a huge amount of wealth and power during the glorious era, we were still at a disadvantage against the powerful demons. We were almost completely destroyed. It wasn't until the sixth great temple, formed by human powerhouses, appeared 3,000 years ago that we barely managed to stabilize ourselves and stop the demons from advancing. However, our temple alliance only occupies less than a quarter of the continent's surface area. At this point, Xingyu's voice became visibly agitated, and his eyes emitted a dazzling brilliance. So, the first lesson I'm going to teach you today is to let you remember the pain and humiliation that the demons brought us. As a knight, we have to protect our homes, protect our loved ones, and protect humanity. These words that you have to memorize every day are not empty words. You have to be strong enough to protect the people we have to protect. The demons have killed thousands of our compatriots, and dyed the earth red with the blood of our compatriots. For the past 3,000 years, our sixth great temple has never dared to slack off. For the sake of humanity's reproduction and inheritance, for the sake of one day reclaiming everything we have lost, and to chase away those cruel and vicious demons, we have done everything we can until the very last drop of our lives. Long Haochen, you have to remember that the demons are our enemies who have a blood feud with us. Xingyu's voice was very infectious. Even the 9-year-old Long Haochen felt his blood boil because of his words. The demons are our enemies who have a blood feud with us. Long Haochen firmly repeated what Xingyu said. Xingyu nodded. All our efforts are to chase them out of our homes, reclaim everything we have lost, and protect our loved ones. Let me ask you, if one day we are unable to stop the invasion of the demons, what will happen when they come to Odin Town? Your friends and your mother, what kind of disaster will they face? Long Haochen shivered, and the stubbornness in his eyes became stronger. A look of satisfaction appeared in Xingyu's eyes as he watched him. Naturally, he could tell that this little fellow had already memorized what he had said. That's all I have to teach you today. Starting tomorrow, I will tell you about the origins of the sixth great temple. Next, I will teach you about our human language and some knowledge related to the demons. For the whole morning, Long Haochen was immersed in the various stories Xingyu told him. Compared to the previous chief instructor Balza, this new teacher had brought him so many different things. All kinds of quotations, simple and direct, as if he had endless knowledge. In just one morning, Long Haochen already felt that his brain was filled with a lot of knowledge. This made Long Haochen like this teacher Xingyu immediately. Tomorrow morning, I will test you on everything you have taught today. Okay, let's eat. You can rest for an hour after the meal. With that, Xingyu seemed to be performing magic, and all kinds of food were placed on the wooden table in a few seconds. A slightly hot energy surged from Xingyu's hands, and under the stunned gaze of Long Haochen, the food suddenly emitted hot steam and a rich fragrance. A large pot of crystal-clear white rice, 2 meat and 2 vegetable dishes, 4 large portions, and a pot of fragrant chicken soup that made Long Haochen swallow his saliva instantly. Because of his family's financial difficulties, he had never eaten such good food in his life. Just looking at it, Long Haochen's eyes were a little dazed. Xingyu took out 2 pairs of bowls and chopsticks. You can rest for a while after eating. Long Haochen suddenly stood up quickly, walked in front of Xingyu, and knelt on the ground with a thud. What are you doing? Don't you know that a man's knees are gold? How can you easily kneel to others? Xingyu scolded angrily. Long Haochen lowered his head and stammered, Teacher, you? You have to kneel to others for such a small favor. Do you think I'm teaching a kowtowing bug? Xingyu's voice became even harsher. Long Haochen said in a low voice, Teacher, what I want to say is, can I eat a little less every day, and then bring some for Mom every week when I go home? Mom has never eaten such delicious food before. Xingyu suddenly froze, and his original anger disappeared in an instant. His entire person seemed a little sluggish, even giving off a feeling of stiffness. Because Long Haochen's head was lowered, he didn't see that his mysterious new teacher's lips were actually trembling slightly. Her eyes were also sparkling with a few sparkles. Slowly standing up, Xingyu pushed open the door and walked out, but his voice came back, "Get up and eat. I promise you, as long as you work hard with me and can meet my requirements, I will have someone bring a portion of food to your mother every day." "Thank you, teacher." Long Haochen was overjoyed. Kneeling, he turned around and kowtowed a few times in the direction of the door, then stood up and started eating the tempting food. Xingyu stood outside the door and looked up at the sky, as if he was trying hard to suppress something. Using a voice that only he could hear, he said, "Humility, honesty, compassion, bravery, fairness, sacrifice, honor, persistence, kindness, justice. What else does he lack? Is he really a natural knight?" When he returned to the wooden hut, little Haochen had already finished his lunch, but left half of each dish untouched. He even filled a bowl of rice and placed it with Xingyu. Seeing him return, he hurriedly stood up and looked at him respectfully. "The room next door is yours. Go rest for a while. I will call you when it's time." "Yes." Long Haochen felt that teacher Xingyu was a gift from the heavens, and went to rest in high spirits. An hour later, Xingyu called out Long Haochen. "Afternoon until night will be your training time. This is for you." Xingyu handed a pair of dark green bamboo swords to Long Haochen. This pair of bamboo swords were much lighter than the wooden swords Long Haochen had used. One in each hand, although light as a feather, one could feel the toughness within. Xingyu pulled his arm and soared up again, flying down the mountain peak. In just a short while, he had brought Long Haochen to the middle of the mountain. Pointing at a large rock in front of them, Xingyu said, "This is a natural nest of owl ants. There are thousands of owl ants inside. Although these insects were not considered magical beasts, they were very aggressive, especially towards intruders. Remember, use your bamboo swords to protect yourself." It was just a simple instruction, but before Long Haochen could understand what was going on, Xingyu had already kicked away the rock in front of them, and sent Long Haochen into the pitch-black cave under the rock as Long Haochen cried out in surprise. A gentle force carried Long Haochen's body down, and he fell about 5 meters before his feet touched the ground. The rock above his head had returned to its place, and he couldn't see his fingers in front of his face. He could only vaguely make out about 10 square meters of space in front of the rock. Just then, there was a buzzing sound, and Long Haochen felt as if there were countless things densely packed around him, flying towards him from all directions. Only then did he understand what teacher Xingyu meant, and subconsciously brandished the pair of bamboo swords in his hands. However, what he had learned in Odin's temple was only the most basic of chopping, hacking, and stabbing technique. Faced with the innumerable number of crazy owl ants, his body was almost instantly bitten in many places. Intense pain came from all over his body, causing Long Haochen to scream out in pain, and the bamboo swords in his hands immediately became scattered. "This is one of your training methods and also your first test. If you can't even withstand this, you can leave the mountain tomorrow." Xingyu's voice reached Long Haochen's ears, calming his panicked emotions a little, but the pain from his body became even more intense. His clothes couldn't stop the owl ants' bites, and even if he only swung the bamboo swords randomly, he could clearly feel that he had hit a large number of things. "I can withstand it," Long Haochen shouted. Thinking of his mother, thinking of what Xingyu had said to him today, his courage immediately broke through the shackles of fear, and he desperately waved the bamboo swords in his hands, driving away the owl ants that were attacking him. "Although you can't see now, you've only lost your sight. You still have hearing, smell, touch, feel, and even taste. Use everything you have to help yourself to feel everything around you." Chapter 3. Xingyu's voice rang out again, but he only gave a few simple instructions on how to wield the sword before his voice disappeared. Long Haochen, who was only 9 years old, had to face the pitch-black cave, the crazy owl ants, and the incessant pain all by himself. Because of the pain, he slowed down again and again, but as soon as he thought of his mother, new courage surged in his heart. The owl ants only brought him excruciating pain. He gritted his teeth and endured the pain, swinging the bamboo sword in his hand again and again. Xingyu stood outside the cave, feeling the passing of the minutes and seconds. The expression on his face changed several times. More than once, he raised his hand to push away the boulder in front of him, but he resisted the urge. If it had been any other child from the Odin Palace, they would have fainted not long after entering the cave. However, Long Houchen was still conscious, and fought hard against the owl ants. The owl ants were not poisonous, but they could easily cause excruciating pain. Not only were their inch-long bodies extremely hard, they also had powerful attack. The look in Xingyu's eyes kept changing. The method he used to train Long Houchen was very extreme. However, he was very clear about the benefits of such an extreme method. As Long Houchen could endure it, then his extraordinary spiritual power would be developed at the fastest speed possible. Moreover, there would be many other benefits. Of course, the prerequisite was that his mind could not break down. An entire hour, but to Long Houchen, it felt as long as a century. When his entire body was numb from the pain and he could no longer wield the bamboo sword in his hand, his body went limp and he fell into a coma. It was also at this moment that the stone at the top of the cave opened, and a great force pulled his body upwards. Countless owl ants were suppressed in the cave by a mysterious force, unable to fly out. Even though this was all arranged by Xingyu, when he saw Long Houchen now, he still gasped, and a trace of pity appeared in his eyes. At this moment, Long Houchen's clothes were torn beyond recognition, and his entire body was almost swollen. His originally beautiful little face was no longer recognizable. Even the pair of bamboo swords had been bitten by owl ant. Xingyu quickly stuffed a pill into Long Houchen's mouth. With a flash of light, Xingyu brought Long Houchen back to the wooden hut at a speed that was many times faster than when he came. There were a total of 3 wooden houses. Other than the master and disciple who lived in one each, there was one that Long Houchen had never been to before. At this moment, Xingyu led him into this wooden hut. As soon as he entered the wooden hut, he was greeted by a wave of hot air. On the ground of this wooden house, there was a pond dug out of a rock. To be precise, this wooden house was built on top of the pond. The pool water was almost overflowing. The pool water was brown in color, and there were many medicinal herbs floating on it. Xingyu quickly took off Long Houchen's torn clothes, and carefully placed his body into the steaming hot water. Only his mouth and nose were exposed outside of the water. This was a hot spring, and Xingyu had dug this pool at the mouth of the spring. The unconscious Long Houchen did not know that the medicinal herbs soaking in the pool water were worth more than 10,000 bottles of vitality, nurturing fluid. An hour later, when Xingyu saw that the swelling on Long Houchen's body was gradually disappearing, he walked out of the wooden hut. The sun was gradually blocked by the darkness of the night. Unknowingly, dusk had arrived. It hurts. Woo! Soaking in the hot spring, Long Houchen cried out, waking up from his coma. His body moved, and naturally, he could not maintain his balance. Although the pool was not deep, he still choked on his saliva. With a splash, he struggled out of the pool and coughed loudly. Where was this? Long Houchen looked blankly at the steam around him and the pool he was in. The pain that had originally been all over his body had disappeared. Other than his body being clean and without any cover, everything seemed normal. The door opened, and Xingyu walked in from outside with clothes in hand. "Put on your clothes and come out." With a simple order, he walked out. Long Houchen walked out of the pool in a daze. He picked up a towel from the side to dry his body and put on clean clothes. In his mind, he also recalled everything that had happened in the owl ant's nest. When he thought of the constant pain, he could not help but shiver. At that time, he had completely relied on his courage to hold on, but now that he thought about it, he felt as if all his limbs and bones were being hurt again. Pushing the door open, he found that he was in the 3rd wooden hut. When he walked into the central main room, The table was already filled with a sumptuous meal. Eat. Xingyu acted as if nothing had happened. He pointed at the meal on the table and ate first. Long Haochen looked at his teacher and stammered, "Teacher, I eat first." Xingyu's gaze swept over him sternly. Long Haochen did not dare to say anything more. He hurriedly sat down and ate. It was as if he had not eaten for a long time. Tonight, he was exceptionally hungry, and his appetite was almost 3 times that of usual. Other than a small portion of Xingyu's meal, Long Haochen had finished all the food in a short while. "Tell me how you feel today." Xingyu did not let Long Haochen clean up the dishes and asked calmly. "It hurts," Long Haochen said honestly. "Is that all you've got?" Xingyu said coldly, "This is just the beginning. Come out with me. Take your bamboo sword." The teacher and disciple walked out of the wooden hut and came to the top of the mountain. 2 identical bamboo swords appeared in Xingyu's hands. Among weapons, the sword is called the Way of the King. It can attack and defend. If you want to protect everything, you must first protect yourself. I will now teach you the seal formula. Watch closely. The bamboo swords moved, and a curtain of light appeared. The dreamlike sword light flashed on the mountain top. Lines of the formula accompanied by the sword light fell into Long Haochen's ears. And today, his hellish training had just begun. For 7 days in a row, Xingyu would teach Long Haochen all kinds of knowledge in the morning. Astronomy, geography, history, and everything else. There would be an assessment the next day. And this was also the happiest time of the day for Long Haochen. In the afternoon, hell would come. The nest of owl ants was a compulsory lesson every day, and the ending was the same. That kind of inhuman pain tortured Long Haochen to the point where he wished he was dead. Whenever the thought of giving up arose in his heart, Xingyu would very simply remind him that there were only a few days left before he returned home. Every time he went to the owl ant's cave, the training would undoubtedly end with him passing out. When he woke up, he would find himself soaking in the hot spring, and the pain would be gone. After dinner, the training would begin again. Xingyu would teach Long Haochen some techniques and make him memorize some things. The day's training would not end until late at night. What made Long Haochen the most miserable was that Xingyu would not allow him to sleep. At night, when he was exhausted, Xingyu taught him a way to meditate. In Long Haochen's words, it was called sitting to sleep. But Xingyu would supervise him. If he did not meditate according to Xingyu's teachings, then there was no doubt that Xingyu's bamboo sword would strike his back and wake him up. And so, 7 days passed. Long Haochen could only stay in the owl ant's nest for an hour, and now he had added another quarter of an hour. After the hot spring, he had dinner. Long Haochen obediently waited for Xingyu to teach him. After a week of training, he was no longer just respectful to Xingyu, but in awe and fear from the bottom of his heart. "There is no need to continue tonight. Go home. But the meditation cannot be interrupted. Come back tomorrow morning." Xingyu tossed a bottle of essence nurturing fluid to Long Haochen and waved his hand, indicating that he could leave. Long Haochen was relieved. After saluting Xingyu, he flew out of the wooden house. He could finally go home. Looking at his departing figure, the corners of Xingyu's mouth revealed a smile that Long Haochen had never seen before. "Silly boy, have you forgotten where this is? 3 years. I can only stay here for 3 years. I will teach you what I have learned at all times." It felt good to be so light. As Long Haochen ran down the mountain, he felt the changes in his body. In just a week's time, he discovered that all of his senses had clearly been enhanced compared to before. Although he was tortured to death in the owl ant's nest, every time he went there, he would feel different. At least a week had passed. Now he could somewhat systematically resist the owl ant's attacks from all directions. His reaction speed was also much faster than when he first arrived. The biggest change was in his body. Although he hadn't tested it, Long Haochen could be sure that his spiritual power had definitely increased. It had increased by at least 2 points. It had only been a week. Although he had to go through such painful training every day, and didn't even have time to sleep after a week, his originally thin and weak body had clearly become stronger, and his complexion had become much rosier. In addition to eating well, it was naturally because he soaked in the hot spring every day. Long Houchen didn't know that the effect of the hot spring and medicinal herbs together was called marrow cleansing and bone forging. He was excitedly running down the mountain when suddenly, a faint fishy smell caught his attention. A week of training against the owl ants had not been in vain. Without even thinking about it, Long Houchen instantly stopped in his tracks and jumped to the side. At the same time, he pulled out a pair of bamboo swords from his back. With a whoosh, a pitch-black shadow just happened to sweep past the path that he had to pass through. At this time, it was almost dusk. Long Houchen could clearly see what had attacked him at a glance. Its body was over 4 feet long, and its entire body was pitch black. Its 4 short but thick limbs supported it from the ground, and its back was covered in fine scales. Its barbed tail was swaying behind it, and its pair of brown eyes were staring at him. Magical beast? Long Houchen couldn't help but whisper, suddenly feeling nervous. Xing Yu taught him all kinds of knowledge every day, including the introduction of magical beasts. Coincidentally, a few days ago, he had mentioned this magical beast in front of him. Scorpion-tailed lizard, mid-grade 1 magical beast. It was roughly equivalent to 30 to 50 points of spiritual power for various human professions. Magical beasts were divided into 4 levels: beginner, mid-grade, high-level, and peak. The biggest difference between them and wild beasts was that they could use spiritual power to strengthen themselves or attack the enemy. Rank 1 magical beasts were relatively weak. They generally didn't have the ability to use spiritual power to attack the enemy, and could only strengthen themselves. This scorpion-tailed lizard was like that. It was a carnivorous magical beast, and the scales on its back had a certain amount of defensive power. Its tail was poisonous, and its weak point was its abdomen. However, it usually crawled on the ground to attack, so it rarely exposed its abdomen. The scorpion-tailed lizard's brown eyes looked fiercely at Long Houchen, and its mouth opened to reveal its white teeth, as if wondering how long such a small human could eat. Facing a magical beast for the first time, Long Houchen could only feel the hairs on his back standing up. He held the bamboo sword tightly with both hands, but didn't act rashly, nor did he turn around and run. It was not easy for him, only 9 years old, to be able to stay calm at this time, because he still remembered that Xing Yu had said that the scorpion-tailed lizard was very fast in short sprints. At the same time, he had also been taught that as a knight, he could never leave his back to the enemy. The scorpion-tailed lizard didn't give him more time to think. Its thick and powerful limbs pushed off the ground, and it pounced straight at Long Houchen, biting at Long Houchen's thigh. At this time, the past 7 days of hellish training came into play. Almost instinctively, Long Houchen took a step to the left, and at the same time, the 2 bamboo swords in his hands slashed out, chopping at the scorpion-tailed lizard's head. The reason why he took a step to the side instead of retreating was because Xing Yu had taught him that when he wasn't sure of the terrain behind him, he shouldn't retreat easily. Otherwise, once he was affected by the unknown terrain, he could easily fall into a passive position. The side was different. He could see it from the corner of his eye, and he could dodge it at the same time. Although the bamboo swords were tough, they were light and didn't have much destructive power. When they landed on the scorpion-tailed lizard, it was like cutting through leather. But now, Long Houchen wasn't the same person he was when he first took the Squire Knight assessment. With a spiritual energy output of nearly 30 points, he smashed the scorpion-tailed lizard back to the ground. But the scorpion-tailed lizard's attack didn't stop there. As soon as its body landed, it swept its poisonous tail. Relying entirely on his reflexes, Long Houchen leaped up more than 3 feet into the air. At the same time, he used the sword in his right hand to block the scorpion-tailed lizard's attack. This simple exchange gave Long Houchen confidence. After blocking the scorpion-tailed lizard's attacks twice, he was surprised to find that magical beasts weren't that scary. At the same time, the resentment that he'd been suppressing for the past 7 days had dissipated a lot. Compared to 7 days ago, he was much stronger, and his reflexes were much faster. Without a doubt, this was all thanks to teacher Xingyu. He didn't have this kind of improvement before. Although the experience in the owl ant crypt would always wake him up from nightmares, he had to admit that the effect was pretty good. The scorpion-tailed lizard wouldn't give up so easily. After missing its attack, it pounced on Long Houchen again. And this time, its body seemed to have expanded a little. Because Long Houchen was a little distracted after the first round of attacks, his reaction was a little slower this time. But he still had time to slash it with his bamboo sword. But this time, the scorpion-tailed lizard didn't fall to the ground. Not good, this was its charge skill that strengthened itself. While Long Houchen was still in shock, his bamboo sword had been knocked away. At the same time, he lost his balance and fell backward. The scorpion-tailed lizard's ferocious mouth was right in front of him. A strong sense of danger instantly caused Long Houchen's pupils to contract violently, as if something had exploded in his brain. At that moment, he suddenly felt that the scorpion-tailed lizard, which was right in front of him, seemed to have slowed down. Its every movement and the angle at which he fell backwards were extremely clear. If someone could see Long Houchen's eyes at that moment, they would find that in the center of his blue eyes, his pupils had shrunk to the size of a needle tip, but his gaze was extremely calm. Vaguely, there was a cold light shining in it that ordinary people didn't have. The sword in his right hand stabbed into the ground as his body fell backwards. At the same time, his upper body leaned back, and the sword in his left hand swept with all his might. In that instant, Long Houchen felt as if his spiritual power had broken through to a whole new level. The sword struck the scorpion-tailed lizard's lower jaw. Although it wasn't able to send it flying due to its strengthened state, it was still enough to close its ferocious mouth. At the same time, Long Houchen used the bamboo sword in his right hand to bend backwards into a bow. His left leg swept out and kicked the scorpion-tailed lizard's lower jaw again. The two consecutive blows were closely connected. The scorpion-tailed lizard's body finally couldn't maintain its balance and was lifted up by his kick. At the same time, Long Houchen used the bamboo sword to complete a backflip. At the same time, he let go of the bamboo sword in his right hand, which allowed him to land an instant earlier. The bamboo sword in his left hand stabbed upwards with a faint layer of white lightning. With a poochie sound, the scorpion-tailed lizard's lower abdomen was instantly pierced by the bamboo sword, which stopped its body from falling. With a shrill scream, the scorpion-tailed lizard's tail swept over in a final struggle before death. But Long Houchen had already made a judgment. With his sword successful, he rolled on the ground and dodged the scorpion-tailed lizard's final blow. At the same time, he pulled out the sword in his right hand that had been stabbed into the ground and took up a defensive stance. Bang! The scorpion-tailed lizard fell to the ground, its body twisting violently. The pain in its abdomen caused it to scream again and again, but it didn't die immediately. Long Houchen first looked around calmly. After finding no other magical beasts, he found a big tree to lean on and gasped for breath. In just an instant, his whole body was drenched in sweat. All his physical strength seemed to have been drained at this moment. From facing the scorpion-tailed lizard to defeating it, it had only been a few seconds. Those few seconds of hovering on the edge of death could be said to have stimulated all of his potential. In particular, the process of perception was particularly clear, which allowed Long Houchen to unleash all of his abilities to the extreme. The final fatal blow was the only skill that Starry Galaxy had taught him, the pure white blade. In an instant, he concentrated all of his body's spiritual power into a single point, producing 110% of his attack power. Regarding Long Houchen's previous series of actions, even someone hidden in the dark had to say that it was perfect. Even when Long Houchen was hit and lost his balance, it could even be seen as a lure. After all, his subsequent reactions were not the slightest bit off. 2 swords and a kick were all it took to kill the scorpion-tailed lizard. At the same time, his spiritual power broke through the 30 barrier and entered the realm of a rank 3 Connect Knight. This was also the reason why Long Houchen felt his strength increase. For any profession, the higher the level, the more obvious the feeling would be when breaking through. Long Houchen panted for the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. The sky had already darkened, and Long Houchen felt that his strength had recovered a bit. The scorpion-tailed lizard also lay there motionless. Looking at the dead scorpion-tailed lizard, the eyes of the 9-year-old Long Houchen gradually became filled with something. "Teacher, you're right. One must endure the most bitter of hardships to achieve greatness. I shouldn't have been dissatisfied with you. If it wasn't for your guidance, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to see my mother again. Teacher, I won't complain anymore, even if it's secretly in my heart." As he spoke, Long Houchen bowed respectfully towards the direction of the mountain peak, then carefully walked to the side of the scorpion-tailed lizard. Even the lowest-level major monster was much more valuable than wild beasts. A mid-rank 1 major monster like this was worth at least a gold coin. Long Houchen couldn't bear to waste it. He carefully found a rock and knocked off the tail of the scorpion-tail lizard. Then, he tied 2 vines to its tail before pulling it towards the direction of home. He didn't encounter any danger on the way back to Odin Town. He first ran to a shop and sold the scorpion-tailed lizard for 1 gold and 2 silver coins, then returned home. Baiyu seemed to have known that her son would come back today. When Long Houchen entered the house, he immediately saw a sumptuous dinner that he had never seen at home before. Teacher kept his promise and really did bring delicious food for his mother. Seeing this, little Long Houchen couldn't help but feel even more grateful to Xingyu. "Mom, for you." Long Houchen took out all the money he had just received and handed it to Baiyu like he was presenting a treasure. Baiyu was stunned. "Where did you get the money?" In order not to worry his mother, Long Houchen told a white lie. "Teacher told me to bring it to you. Teacher said that after I become a night attendant, I can also get a salary. This is the salary for the first year. If my cultivation improves quickly, there might be more rewards in the future." Surprisingly, Baiyu didn't ask anything. She took the money and smiled. "Long Houchen, you must listen to teacher, understand?" "Yes." Long Houchen nodded repeatedly. Baiyu asked, "Is cultivation hard?" If it was before the hunt for the scorpion-tailed lizard, Long Houchen would definitely hesitate to answer this question. After all, in his heart, the shadow of the owl ant's crypt was quite strong. But now he shook his head without hesitation. "Mom, it's not hard at all. Teacher taught me well. He gave me a lot of delicious food every day and let me soak in the hot spring." Hearing his words, Baiyu's face showed some relief. She touched her son's head. "Hurry up and eat." After dinner, Long Houchen didn't forget to use the regather liquid he brought back to boil wild vegetable soup for his mother. Only then did he happily go back to his room to sleep. Early the next morning, he set foot on the road back to Mount Odin. He didn't encounter any magical beasts on the road, and soon returned to the top of the mountain. "Teacher, I'm back." Long Houchen excitedly walked into the wooden house. Xingyu seemed to have been waiting there for a long time. He said lightly, "Before today's lesson, I want to test whether you have forgotten what you learned last week. Tell me the amount of spiritual power required for a night attendant, a night to advance, and a night." Long Houchen answered almost without hesitation. From level 1 to level 10, a night attendant increases by 1 level for every 10. When a spiritual power exceeds 100, you will be promoted to a night attendant. A night attendant also has a spiritual power of 10. When a spiritual power exceeds 200, you can take the real night test. During the night test, not only do you have to test your spiritual power, but you also have to go through the 10 standards of a night. After becoming a knight, the first level is still 10 points of spiritual power, which means a total of 210 points of spiritual power can be promoted to a level 2 knight. The next 9 levels require 30 points of spiritual power to advance by 1 level. When the final knight level 10 is promoted to the 4th level, you need to accumulate 50 points of spiritual power. That is 500 points of spiritual power. Xingyu then asked, "Then why is the spiritual power required to advance from level 1 to level 2 different after becoming a real knight?" Long Haochen said, "Because after entering the 3rd level, you can be considered as a real expert of the profession. Level 1 to level 2 is just a process of adapting to the stage. You taught me that it is the same for the 3rd level, the 4th level, and the 5th level. It is the easiest to advance from level 1 to level 2. After that, Xingyu asked a series of questions. It took a full hour for the test to end. Long Haochen answered all of his teacher's questions without a single mistake, showing his amazing memory. Very good, you remember it well. Let us begin today's lesson. Let me ask you, for a knight, which do you think is more important? Or is defense more important? Hearing Xingyu's question, Long Haochen couldn't help but be stunned. After thinking for a while, he shook his head blankly. Xingyu showed a rare smile on his face. You are very honest. You didn't answer a random question to brush me off. For this question, let alone you, even the higher-ups of the Knights Templars would find it hard to answer. Because of this question, after becoming a knight, the Knights Templars were divided into 2 branches, the Punishment Knight and the Guardian Knight. The Punishment Knight is a knight who focuses on attack. Wielding a 2-handed weapon, riding a mount, and using offensive holy spells, they are extremely strong in single combat. In a head-on battle, they are stronger than warriors and assassins of the same level. The Guardian Knight focuses on defense. Wielding a weapon in one hand and a shield in the other, they are the core of the team. They are good at all kinds of support and healing holy spells. Perhaps they are weaker than the Punishment Knight in single combat. But in a team battle, the Guardian Knight is much more useful than the Punishment Knight. At this point, Xingyu paused for a while, then looked at Long Haochen and asked, "In our Knights Templars, do you think there are more Guardian Knight or Punishment Knight?" Long Haochen thought for a while, then said, "It should be the Punishment Knight. You said that the Punishment Knight is stronger in combat." Xingyu shook his head and said, "On the contrary, the number of the Guardian Knight and the Punishment Knight in our Knights Templars is 10 to 1. So much difference? Why?" Long Haochen asked, puzzled. Xingyu said, "Because we are in the Temple League. As the head of the 6 Temple Leagues in the Temple League, we, the Knights Templars, have to consider more than just our individual combat strength. We also have to consider our partners. The reason why it is the 6 Temple Leagues is because when these 6 classes work together, they can unleash the greatest combat strength. As the core of the team, the knight not only has magic and martial arts in one, but also has to attack and defend, and at the same time, protect his partners. Therefore, the role of the Guardian Knight is much more important than that of the Punishment Knight." Long Haochen understood a little. "Teacher, then should I be a Guardian Knight or a Punishment Knight in the future?" Xingyu said calmly, "Only you can make the right choice. In this regard, I can't help you. With your personality, you might be more suited to be a Guardian Knight, but I am a Punishment Knight. What I can teach you is mostly the abilities and skills that the Punishment Knight possesses." "Teacher, don't be in a hurry to answer me." Long Haochen was about to say something but was interrupted by Xingyu. "You have a year to think about it. After a year, tell me your answer." "Yes." A year later. Haoyue City. Walking on the wide streets of Haoyue City, Long Haochen's eyes were filled with curiosity and surprise. What a big city! The wide streets were at least 15 feet wide, with shops lining both sides of the street. There was an endless stream of horses and carriages, and the clamor rose and fell. The bustling flow of people was like heaven and earth compared to Odin Town. To the southeast of the Temple League, Haoyue City was a medium-sized city. But even for a city of this level, it was the first time that Long Haochen, who had grown up in Odin Town, had seen it. Long Haochen was very curious about Haoyue City, and the people on the streets were just as curious about him. He was dressed in simple cloth clothes, but had a face as delicate as a porcelain doll's. Today, after a year, Long Haochen's face no longer had the unhealthy color, and he had grown a lot taller. Although he still looked like a child, he gave people a slender feeling. The most surprising thing was that such a beautiful youth actually had 2 long swords on his back, crossed. Those were clearly 2 fine iron swords, over a meter long, 3 inches wide, and at least an inch thick. Although they didn't look sharpened, they weren't light. It was practically a miniature version of a knight's heavy sword. He was so small, how could he use such heavy swords? These people didn't know that if it wasn't for the sake of keeping a low profile, he could easily use 2 real knight heavy swords that were even taller than Long Haochen's. A year of bitter training had brought him a complete transformation. On the 83rd day in the owl ant nest, he could finally use the bamboo swords to block the owl ant's attacks from all directions. And after that, he continued to train in the owl ant nest every day. The only thing that changed was his weapons. From the lightest bamboo sword to the wooden sword, then to the iron sword, fine iron sword, heavy sword, he constantly adapted to the 2 swords of different weight. After he adapted to the knight heavy sword, he used another month to train from the heavy sword back to fine iron sword, wooden sword, and bamboo sword. He completed a complete cycle. By the time he finished, a year had passed. This time, he came to Haoyue City because Xingyu had given him 2 tasks, which could be considered as a test for the year of bitter training. After entering the city, Long Haochen simply asked around and found his first destination, the location of the Knights Templars' temple in Haoyue City. After passing through a few wide streets, he approached the center of Haoyue City and saw the destination marked with a shield and sword. The Haoyue Temple was far from being comparable to the Odin Temple. From the outside, this building was at least 5 stories tall and took up a very wide area. There were 2 young knights in armor standing guard at the entrance. When Long Haochen arrived at the entrance of the Knights Templars, the young knight on the left asked with a smile, "Little friend, who are you looking for?" It had to be said, Long Haochen's pretty little face was quite amiable. "Hello, brothers, I'm looking for Temple Lord Nayland Shu." Long Haochen politely greeted the 2 knights. "Looking for the Temple Lord?" The 2 young knights looked at each other, and the one who spoke first asked, "Then what do you want?" Long Haochen said, "My teacher told me to find Temple Lord Nayland, and then deliver a letter to him." "Then give me the letter," the young knight on the left said. Long Haochen shook his head and said, "Teacher told me to personally deliver it to Temple Lord Nayland." The young knight said awkwardly, "I'm afraid that's not possible. This is the Haoyue City's Knight Temple, only people from our temple can enter." Long Haochen said anxiously, "I'm also a Knights Templars. I'm from the Sun Odin Temple." The young knight said, "It's still not possible. Little brother, it's like this. You children of the Sun Temple can only come to the Sun Temple when there's an examination every 3 years. You still give the letter to me, I'll help you pass it on. If the Temple Lord is willing, then I can bring you in." Long Haochen frowned. Xingyu had warned him that this letter must be personally delivered to Nayland Shu. Just at this time, a clear and pleasant voice sounded. "What are you doing? Making things difficult for a child?" Accompanying the voice, a person walked out of the Haoyue Temple. It was a young girl wearing light armor, her pink long hair neatly combed into a ponytail behind her head. A pair of beautiful blue eyes were watching Long Haochen. This young girl looked to be 18 or 19 years old. Her figure was graceful and moving, and on each side of her shoulder was a sword hilt. "Sir Knight." The 2 young knights who had actually just advanced to the knight rank not long ago saluted respectfully at the same time. The young girl came in front of Long Houchen, looked at his face with some curiosity, and said to the two young knight, "I heard what you said. Rules are dead, people are alive. And this little brother is also a member of our Knights Templars. I'll take him to see Uncle Nayland. Don't tell me he, a child, can cause trouble?" Chapter 4. Yes. The two young knight didn't dare to refute, and respectfully complied. The girl extended her right hand to Long Houchen and said, "Little brother, my name is Lin Exien. Let's go, I'll take you to see Uncle Nayland." Long Houchen was overjoyed. He held Lin Exien's hand and said, "Thank you, sister, my name is Long Houchen." Lin Exien's palm was slender and powerful, but the skin on her palm was obviously rough. It was obviously caused by frequent sword practice. But holding Long Houchen's hand in her palm gave a different feeling. Among his peers, Long Houchen's hand was also very slender, but Lin Exien felt that his hand was very soft and very comfortable to hold. As soon as he entered the Haoyue branch hall, the first thing Long Houchen felt was a simple and unadorned atmosphere hitting his face. The floor was paved with bluish-gray flagstones, and a total of 12 thick stone pillars supported the entire hall on both sides. In front of the hall there were 6 huge stone chairs. Each stone chair was 10 feet high, and carved with many patterns that Long Houchen had never seen before. "Sister, what are those?" Long Houchen curiously pointed at the 6 stone chairs and asked. Lin Exien's eyes suddenly became solemn. "That is the throne of God that symbolizes the highest glory of our Knights Templars. Only the Knight of the Seal can possess one of them." "Little brother, do you know about the Knight of the Seal?" "It is the highest rank of our knight, the 9th rank profession. Every Knight of the Seal is a legendary existence. It is said that they all have the strength to challenge the top 10 demon gods of the 72 Pillars." This was the first time Long Houchen heard the title of Knight of the Seal. Xingyu had never told him about the Knight of the Seal. "Sister, how powerful is the Knight of the Seal? Why are they called Knight of the Seal?" Lin Exien said, "It's precisely because they possess the throne of God that they are recognized by the throne of God, that they can become Knight of the Seal. Don't think that these are just a few chairs. Each of the throne of God is a real divine artifact with the imprint of God on it. My goal is to become a Knight of the Seal one day." Long Houchen asked doubtfully, "But there are only 6 throne of God. What if it's not enough?" Lin Exien giggled. "Silly boy, how could it be that easy? What do you think the Knight of the Seal is? Let me put it this way. We, the Knights Templars, only have 3 Knight of the Seal. It's really too difficult to become a Knight of the Seal." As she spoke, Lin Exien had already walked up to the 2nd floor with Long Houchen. From the outside, the Haoyue branch hall looked very high, but in fact, because each floor inside was very high, there were only 3 floors. The two walked into a spacious room on the 2nd floor. Lin Exien said, "This is the office of Uncle Nayland. It's a bit early now. He hasn't come to the branch hall yet, but he should be here soon." As she spoke, Lin Exien lowered her voice and whispered in Long Houchen's ear with a mysterious face, "Long Houchen, should I call you little brother? Or little sister?" Long Houchen was startled and looked at her inexplicably. Lin Exien giggled and said, "Don't pretend. I disguised myself and ran away from home to join the Knights Templars. Otherwise, they wouldn't accept us girls easily. You are the same as my sister, right? How can a man look as beautiful as you? However, in a few years, when you have also developed, it will be hard to hide it when it is bulging like my sister." As she spoke, she also pulled Long Houchen's hand and pressed it on her bulging chest. Although he was wearing soft armor, the soft and bouncy feeling under the soft armor still instantly passed into Long Houchen's hand. The words that he wanted to refute suddenly couldn't be said, and his little face was already flushed. Since he could remember, he had never been so close to his mother. Although he still didn't understand what it meant for a man to touch a woman's chest, the shyness in his subconscious was released instantly. He was so shy that his face seemed to be dripping blood. "Yeah, so shy." Little sister, you are so cute. Don't worry, from now on in our Hauya branch, your sister will take good care of you. As she spoke, Lin Xian giggled and pinched Long Houchen's little face. Only then did Long Houchen react. Sister, I am a man, not a little sister. At this time, his hand was still pressed on his chest by Lin Xian, and the feeling of blood rushing to his head caused his voice to not be loud. Huh! Lin Xian was stunned for a moment. You are really a boy? Long Houchen nodded his head with all his might. He pulled his hand back and took a few steps back like a child who had done something wrong. Lin Xian said with some distress, But why is your hand so soft? And you are so beautiful? Could it be that I really made a mistake? Thank goodness I was touched. Little brother, tell me how you are going to compensate me. She was about to go out just now and just happened to see Long Houchen at the door. At first glance, she immediately remembered the situation when she sneaked into the Knights Templars, and instantly had a good impression of Long Houchen, so she brought him in. Now that she realized that she made a mistake, and even took the initiative to hold the little boy's hand and touch herself, wasn't this molesting a little Shota? There was no need to mention the gloominess in Lin Xian's heart. Fortunately, the young man in front of her looked to be only about 10 years old. I don't know either, Long Houchen said honestly, but in his heart, he thought, you were the one who took the initiative to hold my hand and touch. I didn't want to touch you. Lin Xian's face turned red and white, and after a while, she said helplessly, All right, you have it easy, little guy. But you have to keep it a secret. Don't let others know. I am your sister from now on. It doesn't seem like a big deal for a big sister to let a little brother touch me. To be able to sneak out from home and choose to become a knight, this girl's character could be imagined. She who was thick-skinned quickly found a lame excuse for herself, and didn't bother with it anymore. Xian, what are you doing here? At this time, a low and muffled voice sounded. Long Houchen and Lin Xian turned their heads at the same time, and saw a huge figure walking in. That's right, it was a huge figure. This person was at least 2 meters tall, and he was definitely a muscular man with a height of 8 feet and a waist circumference of 8 feet. Walking in such a solid building like Hauya Branch Palace, they seemed to be able to feel the ground tremble. Uncle Naylan, you really should lose weight. How about you move to the first floor? Otherwise, one day our Hauya Branch Palace will collapse from the inside, Lin Xian said snappily. This muscular man was naturally Hauya Branch Palace Lord Naylan Shu. Naylan Shu didn't get angry when he heard her words and chuckled, saying, Just drinking water makes you grow fat, what can I do? You brought this little girl here? Your relative? I'm a man. Being misunderstood by Lin Xian was fine, who told him to touch her, but this fat uncle also said so. Long Houchen couldn't hold back the resentment in his heart, and immediately shouted. Hm? Naylan Shu stared blankly for a moment. Lin Xian resisted the urge to laugh, and told him the purpose of Long Houchen's visit. What letter? Let me see. Naylan Shu stretched out his hand towards Long Houchen. Long Houchen took a deep breath, calmed the depression in his heart, and then took out a letter from his bosom and handed it over to Naylan Shu. Opening the letter, Naylan Shu very casually looked at it, but after a few glances, his expression suddenly changed. Even his body straightened a bit, and with a solemn and respectful expression, he read the entire letter to the end. Lin Xian, who was standing to the side, was also very curious. As the palace lord of Hauya Branch Palace, Naylan Shu was a genuine Earth Knight, a 5th-grade profession. In the Temple League, he was also a rare powerhouse. Just a letter could make the usually carefree Naylan Shu become so respectful. There must be a problem. But when she wanted to go over to take a look, Naylan Shu had already put the letter away. Then he nodded towards Long Houchen and said, Follow me. Saying that, he turned around and walked out. Long Houchen followed Naylan Shu to the 3rd floor, and Lin Xian, who was filled with curiosity, also followed. The first floor of Haoyue Branch Palace was mainly for reception, the second floor was for handling various affairs, and the third floor was for the trial and assessment. The place that belonged to Haoyue Branch Palace's knights' residences was at the back of the palace. The third floor was already above the dome of the first floor's hall. Just walking in here, Long Haochen suddenly felt that the air seemed a bit strange. The third floor was an extremely wide hall, at least 5 meters high, and there were no decorations as far as the eye could see. On the surrounding walls there were symbols and lines, faintly glowing. Nayland Shu walked all the way to the center of the trial hall before stopping. A soft cyan light emitted from his right hand, and suddenly from the ground rose a stone pillar-like existence. The whole body was pitch black, and it was impossible to see what material it was made of. Nayland Shu said to Long Haochen, "Do you know what your teacher told you to do here?" Long Haochen shook his head. "Teacher said you would tell me." Nayland Shu nodded, saying, "Master Xingyu told you to come here to take the prospective night assessment. Let's start now. You attack this black pillar with all your strength, from any direction is fine." Hearing the words prospective night assessment, Lin Xian, who was at the side, thought that there was something wrong with her ears. How old was Long Haochen? At most 11 or 12 years old, right? She was already known as the strongest genius in the history of the Haoyue Branch Temple, and she had only passed the prospective night assessment at the age of 13. Looking at Nayland Shu's appearance, it didn't seem like he was joking, and listening to his tone, could this little Haochen's teacher be of a higher rank than Temple Master Nayland? Could it be a rank 6 Radiance Knight? Heavens! The Radiance Knight could already be known as the Temple Master of the Temple League's main city's Knight Temple main temple. How could he let his disciple come to the Haoyue Branch Temple to take the assessment? Lin Xian was full of doubts, but on the other side, Long Haochen had already made his move. A black light flickered, and Long Haochen drew out a fine iron sword. The moment the long sword was in his hand, his entire temperament suddenly underwent an earth-shaking change. The originally shy boy suddenly became stern, his gaze firm and persistent, and his whole body gave people a feeling of stability like a boulder, imperceptibly emitting a bit of power. He didn't look like a 10-year-old at all. Forward step, slash, the two simplest knight attack movements completed the attack. With a muffled bang, the fine iron sword fiercely slashed on the black stone pillar. With a hum, a soft blue halo directly lit up the surrounding walls of the trial hall, and then an accurate number appeared above the black stone pillar. 107. Spiritual energy of 107. Whether it was Nayland Shu or Lin Xian, they couldn't help but widen their eyes at this moment. A spiritual energy of 100 meant that he had broken through to a rank 2 profession. Even if 107 spiritual energy was only rank 1, it was still a rank 2 profession. Moreover, don't forget that Long Haochen didn't use any enhancement skills during the test. It was just a pure slash. Not only them, but even Long Haochen himself was stunned. My spiritual power has already reached 107? Since the Odin Temple's test of 25 spiritual energy points, this was the first time he took the test, and he didn't expect this result. In just 1 year, his spiritual energy had actually reached this level. Quasi-Knight, I'm actually a Quasi-Knight. A feeling of excitement instantly spread throughout his body. At this moment, Long Haochen felt that all the effort he put in the past year was worth it. In just 1 year, a child's spiritual energy increased from 25 to more than 100, and broke through to a rank 2 profession. Although it couldn't be said that this was unprecedented in the Holy Demon Continent, it could definitely be described as a miracle. There was no doubt about Long Haochen's own efforts, but the hot spring medicinal bath that Xingyu gave him every day, and the expert from the Assassin's Temple also had a great effect on his body's meridians. Without the hot spring medicinal bath every day, how could Long Haochen continue to train? Perhaps just 1 coma would be enough for him to rest for more than a week. A year's time had already laid a solid foundation for his body. Nalan Shu gradually came back to his senses, and the way he looked at Long Houchen suddenly showed a huge change, as if he saw a rare treasure. His chubby face even showed a bit of flattery. "You're called Long Houchen, right? How old are you this year?" Long Houchen subconsciously said, 10 years old. Nalan Shu and Lin Xian sucked in a breath of cold air again. A 10-year-old quasi-knight? This could no longer be described as a genius. It would be more appropriate to say that he was a genius. "Temple Lord Nalan, did I pass the test?" Long Houchen asked. Nalan Shu said, "It's like this, according to the general procedure, the quasi-knight test only needs to have enough spiritual energy to pass. But in the letter, your master said that you must challenge a knight and last more than a quarter of an hour under the knight's attack. Otherwise the test will not be considered passed." Regarding this requirement, Nalan Shu felt that it was too harsh. Even a quasi-knight above the 5th rank may not be able to last a quarter of an hour under the attack of a real knight, let alone Long Houchen, who had just entered the level of a quasi-knight. "Good, then please choose a knight," Long Houchen said. His left hand took out another fine iron sword. "Let me do it, let me do it." Lin Xian almost didn't hesitate to come over. The handsome little boy in front of her really aroused her curiosity. A 10-year-old quasi-knight, what kind of concept was this? She must test how much fighting strength this little quasi-knight had. Nalan Shu glanced at Lin Xian, nodded and said, "Pay attention to propriety." Lin Xian smiled and said, "Don't worry, Uncle Nalan, I'm not willing to hurt him. He's my little brother that I just recognized." While speaking, Lin Xian also took out the 2 swords on her back. Compared to the simple fine iron sword in Long Houchen's hand, her 2 swords were much more gorgeous. The swords exuded a pale golden luster, 3 feet and 2 inches long, and the engraved runes exuded a strong holy aura. Lin Xian, who was holding 2 swords in her hands, fixed her gaze on Long Houchen. She was secretly taken aback. Long Houchen, who was holding his weapons, had an extremely obvious change in his temperament. He was no longer the shy and bashful young man from before. There was a hint of sharpness in his cold and stern demeanor. Faintly, she actually felt some pressure. Nalan Shu took a few steps back, and said in a deep voice, "Let's start." With him as the referee on the side, he also had the confidence to not let the 2 sides hurt each other. "Sister, be careful." Long Houchen gave a low shout, his feet already moving. The distance of each step wasn't big, but the speed of his steps was extremely fast. A knight's short-distance charge was displayed. And the 2 swords, one in front, the other on his back, almost in the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Lin Xian. A straight stab quickly and powerfully went straight for Lin Xian's left shoulder, followed by the momentum of the charge. This stab was full of momentum. Lin Xian faintly smiled. The sword in her left hand unhurriedly lifted up, blocking Long Houchen's attack. The sword in her right hand was not in a hurry to attack. She wanted to see what degree this little guy's attack could reach. Bang! Without warning, Long Houchen's right foot suddenly stomped on the ground. The effect of this stomp actually made his seemingly unstoppable charge end in an instant. His body paused, and at the same time, the fine iron sword that was thrusted out also quickly made an action of withdrawing. Just in time to avoid Lin Xian's attack. Nalan Shu's eyes lit up. The skill was interrupted? The moment the fine iron sword in his hand was withdrawn, the blade instantly flashed, and then, with a speed that was at least twice as fast as before, it stabbed out like lightning. The target was still Lin Xian's left shoulder. Pure white blade, sudden stab. The 2 knight skills were released almost perfectly at the same time. Moreover, it was just in time to avoid Lin Xian's attack. The knight's sudden stab skill not only increased attack speed, but also had the effect of condensing spirit energy, combined with the pure white blade itself. The power of this attack had already far exceeded Long Houchen's own 107 spirit energy points. Lin Xian wasn't a pseudo-knight, she was a true knight. The moment her sword missed, she was already on guard. The sword in her right hand was almost in front of her body at the critical moment. Even Long Houchen's sudden stab couldn't be faster than her defense. Ding! The two swords clashed. Long Houchen's stab hit a third of Lin Xian's longsword. The difference in power between a horizontal stab and a horizontal stab was too big. Because of this, even though Lin Xian's spirit energy was much higher than Long Houchen's, she couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Long Houchen's right-hand sword was bounced off, but his movements didn't stop for a second. His right hand holding the fine iron sword raised up, he took another step forward, unexpectedly launching another charge. A second charge, and in such a short distance, it was a second charge in a situation where his own attack was bounced off. Long Houchen's flexible right arm swept up from his side. He had only taken 3 steps in his second charge. Just as his third step landed on the ground, his body seemed to be a little unstable. Using the tip of his foot as a fulcrum, he quickly spun around and raised the sword in his left hand. The pure white blade glowed with a faint white light as it slashed towards Lin Xian. Although Lin Xian's eyes were full of surprise, her talent as a knight also showed at this time. Her right foot pushed back, stabilizing her body. At the same time, her body slightly bent down, the sword in her right hand once again lifted up, the sword in her left hand stabbed forward like lightning, turning into dozens of sword shadows that enveloped Long Houchen's body. Lightning stab, the third-rank knight's skill. Defend, counterattack. And then, a scene that made Nayland Shu on the side stunned appeared. With a loud clang, Long Houchen's sword strike with all his strength collided with Lin Xian's sword strike. Although the difference in spirit energy between Long Houchen and Lin Xian was at least 100, his attack was made with the help of his skill and momentum. The two swords collided, no one gained the upper hand, even Lin Xian's body slightly swayed. But at this time, Lin Xian's lightning stab had already arrived in front of Long Houchen. At that moment, Nayland Shu wanted to shout to stop. Lin Xian also prepared to stop. However, the sword in Long Houchen's right hand that had been swung away before moved. The illusory sword shadows seemed to explode in front of him, a series of dense sounds of metal colliding. All of the lightning stab's attacks were blocked. Because Lin Xian was afraid of hurting Long Houchen, she naturally didn't use her full strength. Not only was her attack blocked, but Long Houchen also took advantage of the situation to launch a counterattack. The two swords danced, one horizontal and one vertical. The knight's signature skill, cross-slash, instantly exploded out. The smile in Lin Xian's eyes disappeared at this time. She, who had sent out the lightning stab, was at the stage where she had just used up her old strength and hadn't recovered yet. Moreover, because she didn't think that Long Houchen would be able to block this attack, she didn't prepare any follow-up move. A layer of faint golden light shone from Lin Xian's body. The sword in her right hand instantly stabbed into the ground. A golden light suddenly burst out, no less than 2 meters away. With 2 dang-dang sounds, Long Houchen's cross-slash was blocked by a layer of golden light, bouncing back. At the same time, he quickly retreated a few steps, taking a defensive stance. The previous series of attacks had also consumed a lot of his strength. Lin Xian looked at the retreating Long Houchen with a somewhat depressed expression. Good. Little guy, you forced Big Sister to use the Rising Sky Array to block your attack. Be careful, Big Sister is going to attack. Rising Sky Array, the knight's rank 3 skill, drawing support from the knight's unique light attribute, it formed a layer of light, creating an all-round defense equal to the user's spiritual power. Her feet stepped forward, Lin Xian jumped up, the sword in her right hand went straight to Long Houchen's head. At this time, she was really a bit depressed, being forced by this little guy Long Houchen, a level 1 quasi-knight, to shamelessly use the Rising Sky Array to block his attack. Her face was burning hot. She had to get back some face. Long Houchen didn't launch a counterattack this time. He raised the sword in his right hand. In that instant, he gave people the feeling as if he was a statue. Even though it was only for a moment, Nalan Shu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. With a crisp clang, Lin Xian was knocked back just like that under the dumbfounded gaze of Lin Xian. It must be known that her spiritual power was at least double that of Long Haochen, and she also jumped in the air. Even if she was lenient, the attack power was still quite considerable. In Lin Xian's view, she should at least force Long Haochen back. But in fact, she was the one who was forced back. The hand holding the sword felt numb. "I'm not fighting anymore, what's going on?" Lin Xian fell to the ground gloomily, looking at Long Haochen, who was still in a defensive stance with a puzzled face. Seeing that Lin Xian stopped, Long Haochen also put away his two swords. He looked at the depressed Lin Xian with some embarrassment and didn't know what to say. "Uncle Nalan, please be a judge. What's going on? Is Long Haochen really only a level 1 quasi-night spirit power? But how did he force me back?" While speaking, Lin Xian saw Nalan Shu's shocked expression. This time, it was as if he had become a statue, standing there with a dumbfounded look. "Uncle Nalan, what's wrong with you?" Lin Xian asked doubtfully. "Divine block? Little Haochen, quickly tell me, did you just use divine block?" Nalan Shu rushed in front of Long Haochen in 2 or 3 steps, his eyes full of eagerness and shock. Li Xian's charming face suddenly turned aghast. "Uncle Nalan, are you right? That represents the Radiance Knight's divine block?" "Impossible, it's absolutely impossible. Isn't it said that only the Radiance Knight can learn divine block?" Radiance Knight, the rank 6 knight title. Divine block was the Radiance Knight's signature skill and was also known as one of the most abnormal skills of the knight profession. Long Haochen said with some confusion, "I don't know what divine block is. Teacher only said it is a blocking skill." Nalan Shu took a deep breath, calmed his agitated mood and murmured, "That's right, it is divine block, it must be. Xianer, I have seen divine block more than once. Whether it is the Guardian Knight or the Punishment Knight, when one reaches the level of the Radiance Knight, they must learn this skill. If it wasn't for divine block, Haochen wouldn't have been able to block your attack just now. No wonder Lord Xingyu asked him to challenge the knight. With the existence of divine block, it is not impossible to resist the knight's attack for 15 minutes. It is true that the threshold for this skill is the Radiance Knight, but this is the threshold for us Knights Templars, not the threshold to learn this skill. As long as one has talent, sufficient judgment and reaction, and is taught by a rank 6 knight or above, any rank can learn it. But the premise is that you have the permission of us Knights Templars to teach it. In the past, there was a great knight who made a great contribution and was taught it as an exception. As an Earth Knight, Nalan Shu's understanding of the divine block skill was much greater than Lin Xian's. But because of this, his shock was even more intense. The effect of divine block was very simple. It was to turn one's defense into a hole in an instant. To put it simply, if a person's defense was like an iron frame, then when the attack power exceeded the defense strength of this iron frame, it could be split open. However, if an iron frame of the same volume and hardness was smelted into an iron block, the same attack power naturally couldn't break it open. Divine block was the process of turning an iron frame into an iron block. It sounded simple, but in fact, it was extremely difficult because one couldn't move during the state of divine block. Therefore, one had to have enough prediction. Moreover, if divine block was trained to a certain level, one could even temporarily convert a part of the opponent's attack power into one's own power after blocking, and use it in the next attack or defense. It was not without reason that divine block was called God's defense when practiced to the extreme. To break the defense of divine block, one had to have at least 3 times more spiritual power than the user of the skill. Moreover, it also depended on the user's mastery of divine block. Temple Master Nalan, did I pass the assessment? Long Haochen didn't know what the two in front of him were surprised about, and asked. Naturally you passed. Wait a minute, I'll go get the things that Master Xingyu asked you to bring back. As he spoke, Nalan Shu quickly turned and left. But the stormy waves in his heart didn't show any signs of calming down. Lin Xian looked at Long Houchen as if she was looking at a monster. Brother, tell me, what kind of advanced night skill did you use to block my lightning stab just now? Long Houchen shook his head and said, I didn't. I just dealt with it as it came. You broke my lightning stab purely by reflex? Lin Xian's voice couldn't help but raise a few octaves. She naturally didn't know that Long Houchen's defense was much more abnormal than his attack power. The torture in the owl ant crypt for a year was not in vain. With the medicinal bath in the hot spring and the removal of impurities from the 12 main meridians, his 1 year of cultivation was at least equivalent to 3 years of bitter cultivation for ordinary people. Not long after, Nalan Shu returned and handed 2 things to Long Houchen. A circular badge with a sword and shield engraved on it and a golden gem the size of an egg. This is the rank badge of a quasi-knight. The star on it represents your rank of quasi-knight level 1. After you have a breakthrough, you can take the assessment again at any time. This Stone of Awakening is what Master Xingyu asked you to bring back. Be sure to keep it well. Thank you. Taking the 2 things and putting them into his bosom, Long Houchen respectfully saluted Nalan Shu. Nalan Shu said, I'll let Xen take you around our Haoyue branch palace? Long Houchen shook his head and said, No need. Teacher also gave me a task to complete. I have to hurry. Nalan Shu didn't urge him to stay, and accompanied Long Houchen to the door with Lin Xian. Sister Xian, how do I get to the Adventurers Guild? Long Houchen asked Lin Xian before parting. Lin Xian said, The Adventurers Guild isn't far from here. You see, turn right from the street in front, walk for about 1 kilometer, and then turn left. Thank you, Sister Xian, nice to meet you. I'll be leaving first. Palace Lord Nalan, goodbye. After saying goodbye to the 2, Long Houchen walked quickly according to the path Lin Xian showed him. Looking at his departing back, Lin Xian almost couldn't wait to ask Nalan Shu, Uncle Nalan, what is the origin of this little guy? With his age, it's impossible for him to have made outstanding contributions to our Knights Templars. How could he have learned divine defense? Who is his teacher? Nalan Shu sighed lightly, shook his head and said, I can't tell you these. You only need to know that his divine defense is completely in line with the rules of our temple. In the near future, I'm afraid that our Haoyue temple won't be famous even if we don't want to. Xener, you see, you're not the only genius in this world. You have to practice hard, otherwise 4 years later when the Alliance selects monster hunters, you'll have to return empty-handed. Lin Xian nodded silently and said, I don't know when I'll be able to see this beautiful little brother. Nalan Shu smiled and said, I can tell you this, 2 years later, he will come back. And he will stay at least until the Alliance selects monster hunters. Long Houchen followed the path Lin Xian pointed out, and soon found the location of his second mission, the Adventurers Guild. Compared with the quiet of the Knights Templars Haoyue Temple, the environment near the Adventurers Guild was much more chaotic. Many people were constantly coming in and out, and there were people in all kinds of costumes. His eyes lit up. He already saw the place he was looking for. Not far to the left, there was a counter with a sign for accepting a mission. He immediately walked over with quick step. At this time, there was no one there, so Long Houchen walked forward and said to a girl in her 20s behind the counter, Big sister, I want to accept a mission. The girl behind the counter looked at Long Houchen, who was only a head taller than the counter and had a beautiful face, and couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Yo, our Adventurers Guild is really accepting all kinds of things. This kind of little guy also ran over to accept a mission, it's really funny. A somewhat exaggerated rough voice sounded from the side. Long Houchen turned his head and saw a sturdy warrior with a full beard looking at him with a face full of disdain and laughing. Long Houchen frowned, but didn't pay attention to him, and once again said to the girl behind the counter, Big sister, I want to accept a mission. The girl behind the counter was also a little curious. Little brother, what mission do you want to accept? Without waiting for Long Houchen to speak, the rough voice sounded again. What little brother, you're clearly a little sister. Little sister, uncle will take you to buy a lollipop, how about it, ha ha. This rough man's words caused some of the nearby adventurers to be unable to help but roar with laughter. I want to accept a level 2 mission. It's best if it's hunting magic beasts. Long Houchen frowned a bit more, but still said to the girl behind the counter. The girl said with some difficulty, Little brother, I'm afraid that's not possible. Level 2 and above missions can only be accepted with a level 2 profession. That's right, hurry up and go home to drink milk. I just don't know if your mother has milk for you to drink. If she does, how about letting me have a few mouthfuls? Looking at your charming appearance, I reckon your mother is also pretty good. It would be even more perfect if you had an older sister or something. It was still the same voice. Hearing it again, Long Houchen's eyes had already turned cold. Chapter 5. The girl behind the counter hurriedly whispered, Little brother, hurry up and leave. This isn't a place you should be. Ignore them. These adventurers lived on the edge of a knife. Under pressure, they would often not behave well. But they probably won't dare to do anything to you. After all, this is the guild. After saying this, the girl suddenly realized that there was something called determination in the clear eyes of the young man in front of her. He shouldn't have insulted my mother. As he said this, Long Houchen took out something from his pocket and handed it to the girl. He then turned around and walked towards the bearded man. The 10-year-old Long Houchen was not even as tall as the bearded man's chest, but his steps were extremely stable. Yo, 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 everyone look, this little chick is angry. TSK, TSK, look at this pretty little face. This tender and watery face. Even if he's really a little chick, he would be a first-class catamite in the brothel. The bearded man had a double-edged battle axe in his hand. At this moment, he propped the battle axe on the ground and leaned against it, looking at Long Houchen with a mocking expression. Long Houchen walked until he was 10 feet away from the bearded man and stopped. His expression was very calm, his back was perfectly straight, his left hand was clenched into a fist on his right chest, and he gave a standard knight's salute. In the next moment, he took out a white glove and threw it to the bearded man. At the same time, he drew out the 2 swords on his back and pointed them downwards. He said in a deep voice, Your Excellency, you insulted my mother. I, Long Houchen, as a Knights Templars's prospective knight, challenge you to a duel. I won't rest until one of us dies. Long Houchen's voice was very clear, and the people around him could hear it clearly. For a moment, the originally noisy adventurers quietened down. The bearded man was also stunned. However, the bearded man reacted in an instant. Ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. Look at this. This little bastard must have heard too many stories. He even imitated the knight's challenge. Prospective knights? Have your nipple hair grown out? I'll accept your challenge. Come on. Come bite me. Ha 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 ha. Long Houchen raised the sword in his right hand and coldly pointed outside. Please. Although it was his first time at the Adventurers Guild, he knew that he couldn't fight here, even if it was a formal challenge from the knight. After saying this, he took the lead and walked out. The bearded axe warrior followed without hesitation, and a large group of people followed him to watch the show. Only the girl sitting behind the counter stared blankly at the badge in her hand. A level 1 prospective knight. Could he really be a prospective knight? Walking out of the Adventurers Guild, the warm sunlight did not dispel the gloom in Long Houchen's heart. At this moment, Xing Yu's teachings echoed in his heart. There was no need to say much to your enemy. Use the sword in your hand and the blood of your enemy to wash away the shame. The bearded man walked out as well. He lifted his double-edged battle axe and pointed at Long Houchen. Come on. Little bastard, let Grandpa teach you a lesson. When Grandpa defeats you, I won't kill you. I'll just sell you to the red light district. I can even earn a few gold coins to spend. Long Houchen made his move just as another round of laughter rang out from the side. Charge! Rapid footsteps rang out. Long Houchen instantly raised his speed to the limit. The people on both sides could clearly see that the fine iron swords in his hands had a smear of white. The pure white blade. It was indeed the pure white blade often used by the low-level Knights Templar's knight. In an instant the laughter stopped. Long Houchen was already in front of his opponent. The bearded man was shocked when he saw Long Houchen's charge. He also knew the pure white blade. His expression changed. He never expected this kid to be a member of Knights Templars. How could a normal adventurer like him survive after offending the Knights Templars, the leader of the 6 major temples? Forget it. I'll kill this kid first. At worst, I'll just run away. While thinking, the bearded man was emboldened. He raised his double-edged axe with both hands and slashed at Long Houchen, who was charging at him. He was a grade 3 warrior. His spiritual energy was over 120. This stride-heavy chop was also very impressive and full of power. However, Long Houchen had to face demonic beasts on his way home almost every week for the past year. He had a lot of combat experience. Most importantly, he could still maintain his calm. He stomped his right foot on the ground and used the same technique he used against Lin Xin to interrupt his charge. This time, he connected it with another skill. He raised his 2 swords and completed the divine defense block. The instant before the double-edged axe fell. How accurate was his judgment to be able to do that? Without extraordinary spiritual energy, Long Houchen would never be able to complete this combination. With a loud clang, the double-edged battle axe slashed at the intersection of the 2 swords. Many people couldn't help but close their eyes. The contrast between Long Houchen's figure and the bearded man's was too strong. In many people's eyes, he had no choice but to block the attack in a hurry. But he was so young, how much spiritual energy could he have? Moreover, the bearded man's heavy strike was similar to the white blade. It also had the effect of increasing attack power, and it was a heavy weapon. The spectating adventurers could almost see the sword breaking and the man dying. However, the fine iron sword in Long Houchen's hand did not break. While the bearded man was still in shock, the double-edged battle axe swung up, leaving his chest wide open. Long Houchen's divine block couldn't even be broken by the grade 3 knight Lin Xin. How could a grade 2 warrior like him break it? At this moment, Long Houchen's body seemed to glow. The 2 crossed swords in his hands almost smoothly completed a cross slash. The 2 iron swords slashed at the bearded man's leather armor. The iron swords were not sharp, but the sound of bones breaking could be heard from behind the leather armor. The bearded man's eyes widened, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Long Houchen's divine block wasn't very profound, so he couldn't borrow Lin Xion's spiritual energy. However, the bearded man's spiritual energy was only slightly higher than Long Houchen's, so he borrowed 20 points of spiritual energy. With the addition of the white blade and Long Houchen's over 100 points of spiritual energy, the power of this attack was even greater than the bearded man's full strength. How could the ordinary leather armor he was wearing block it? Third bro! 2 cries of alarm sounded out, and 2 burly men rushed out from the crowd. It was obvious that they were with the bearded man. Adventurers were a very dangerous profession, so they usually teamed up. However, they rushed out too late. Pooh! After the cross slash, Long Houchen didn't hesitate to stab the bearded man with the sword in his right hand. The sharp edge of the iron sword instantly pierced through the bearded man's throat. Bastard! The 2 burly men rushed towards Long Houchen. Stop! A cold voice sounded. Then, a pale golden light soared into the sky from behind Long Houchen, forcing the 2 adventurers who were rushing over to retreat. Lin Xian stood there with a cold expression. The 2 swords in her hands were separated on both sides of her body. Pale golden light rose on both sides of her body, showing her strength as a grade 3 knight. Ah, it's Hellrose! someone suddenly exclaimed from the crowd. If you want to die, I don't mind sending you to meet up with the one who just died. Lin Xian's cold voice was filled with killing intent. The two burly men were also warriors. One was holding a heavy sword, and the other was holding a sword and a shield. Looking at Lin Xian, their faces flickered with uncertainty. They naturally knew that they weren't in the right. Long Haochen killed the bearded man in a duel. Even the city guards couldn't interfere. The warrior with the heavy sword shouted angrily, "My third brother only made a few jokes, and this brat killed him. Is this the kindness of your knight?" Of the two warriors, one was a Grade 2 battlemaster, and the other was a Grade 2 battlemaster. Naturally, the two of them were not afraid of Lin Xian. However, they couldn't ignore the Knights Templars behind Lin Xian. Lin Xian snorted in disdain, "Are you guys blind? My brother is a punishment knight, not a guardian knight. The principle of the punishment knight is to eliminate evil and promote good. With my brother's temper, if it wasn't for your companion's extremely disgusting words, why would he kill him? If you're not convinced, then come at me together." As she spoke, Lin Xian's two swords drew a series of strange trajectories in the air. Pale golden light energy gushed out from her body. Nay. With a long neigh, a tall and sturdy winged steed walked out from the strange twisting trajectory. This steed was an extremely rare pink color. It was about 8 feet long and 6 feet tall. The wings on its back weren't wide, as if it couldn't fly. There was a small bump on its head. Its eyes were rose-red. As soon as it appeared, a strong energy aura erupted from its body. The rose-colored eyes exuded a dignified aura. Lin Xian's toes touched the ground, and she leaped up and landed on the back of the horse. She looked at the two knights in front of her, her eyes filled with contempt and disdain. Lin Xian's nickname, Hell's Rose, came from her mount. This was an underage rose unicorn. Even if it was still in its underage state, it was still a real Grade 5 magical beast. With it, not to mention Grade 3 warriors, even Grade 4 warriors would have to take a detour when they met her. Warriors of the same level were not a match for the knight. "She's a knight who returned from the holy mountain of the night?" The warrior holding the shield cried out in surprise. The two looked at each other and didn't dare to say anything else. They quickly carried their companion's corpse and left. Many of the adventurers nearby were discussing in low voices. "These guys are obviously outsiders. They don't even know the number 1 genius of the Haoyue branch, Hell's Rose. They deserve to be taken advantage of. And she's also sister." Long Haochen had been standing beside Lin Xian. After killing someone, his expression didn't change much. Lin Xian jumped down from the Rose Unicorn and smiled. "Silly boy, what are you doing at the Adventurers Guild?" As it turned out, she had heard Long Haochen ask about the Adventurers Guild. She was worried that he would come to this place where dragons and snakes mixed, so she followed him and saw the scene just now. Long Haochen said, "Teacher told me to take a Grade 2 mission." Lin Xian was a little speechless as she said, "Your teacher really trusts you. Let's go, I'll go with you." When they entered the Adventurers Guild again, the adventurers looked at Long Haochen differently. Not to mention that he had such a powerful sister by his side, the strength he showed when he killed the Axe Warrior in a few moves was definitely that of a prospective knight. Although these people didn't know about Divine Block, they could see that Long Haochen was young. He was already a prospective knight at such a young age. Wouldn't the Knights Templars protect him like a treasure? No one dared to act rashly. Lord Knight, here's your badge." The girl behind the counter came up to them as soon as they returned to the Adventurers Guild, and respectfully returned the badge to Long Haochen. After seeing the badge just now, she also ran out to watch the battle and saw everything. At this moment, she looked at Long Haochen with a curious gaze. What happened next was simple. Long Haochen chose a mission to kill 10 mid-tier Grade 2 magic beasts in the Haoyue Swamp, which was 100 miles north of Haoyue City. "Brother, I'll go with you. I'll be worried." Although there aren't many high-level magic beasts in the Haoyue Swamp, There are still grade 3 magic beasts and even grade 4 magic beasts. Also, it'll be faster if I go with you. Sister, that's not good. Teacher told me to complete the mission alone. What's not good about it? You're the one completing the mission alone. Your mission is to kill the magic beasts yourself. I'm only responsible for protecting you from being ambushed by other magic beasts. It's settled. Let's go. As she spoke, Lin Xian pulled Long Houchen out of the Adventurers Guild. She got on her rose unicorn and left the city. This was Long Houchen's first time riding a mount. It was a novelty to him. Sitting on the rose unicorn's back was very stable. Lin Xian was behind him. He could smell a faint rose fragrance. He didn't know if it was from his sister or the rose unicorn. Soon, the two of them left the city. What surprised Long Houchen was that when they left the city, Lin Xian didn't stop her horse. Instead, the city guards saluted her. After leaving Haoyue City, the rose unicorn sped up. A scene that shocked Long Houchen appeared. A layer of faint red light was released from the rose unicorn. The temperature of the surroundings rose and the speed increased. However, with the protection of the faint red light, he didn't feel any wind. The wings on the rose unicorn's back spread out from time to time, making the galloping more stable. It was so fast that it looked like it was flying. So fast. Big sister, your mount is amazing. How can I have such a mount? Long Houchen was still a child. How could he not be excited by such a novel feeling? Lin Xian smiled. As long as you answer my question, I'll tell you. Long Houchen said, Sister, ask away. Lin Xian said, Have you killed people before? Otherwise, why didn't you have any reaction after killing that axe warrior? I can never forget the pain after my first kill. I vomited for 3 days and 3 nights. Long Houchen scratched his head. I haven't killed people before, but I've killed magical beasts. My teacher said to treat enemies like magical beasts. I can't show any mercy. Before confirming that the other party is dead, I can't relax. Since he's a magical beast, why should I feel uncomfortable? I've killed a lot of magical beasts. Moreover, I haven't seen him since the last attack. Actually, even he didn't know that because of his training in the Owl Ant's cave, he had long since distanced himself from fear. Lin Xian said helplessly, I really don't know if your heart is pure and flawless, or if you're cold-blooded. However, your teacher is right. Evil must be eradicated. Long Houchen was anxious to know how to get such a good mount like the rose unicorn. He hurriedly asked, Sister, how do I get this rose unicorn? Lin Xian said, Don't be anxious. Actually, even if I don't tell you, you'll find out in the future. Because you're the same as me. We also have the right to go to the Sacred Night Mountain to choose a mount. What kind of place is the Sacred Night Mountain? Long Houchen asked curiously. In our Knights Templars, most knights can only choose steeds or tame wild magical beasts as their mount. However, there are some exceptions. They are the most talented young knights in each temple. Anyone who can pass the knight's assessment and become a third-order knight or above before the age of 20 will have the right to go to the Sacred Night Mountain with the recommendation of the temple. You're only 10 years old and you're already a knight. It won't be a problem for you to become a knight before the age of 20. The Sacred Night Mountain is a place for us Knights Templars to raise all kinds of powerful magical beasts. In the Sacred Night Mountain, there is a giant spell formation set up by the ancestors of our temple 3,000 years ago. It's very beneficial to the growth of magical beasts and will reduce their wildness. It will make taming them much easier. As long as a young knight is recognized by one of them, he can take it away and make it his mount. This is also one of the best benefits for us Knights Templars. It's just like how the Magic Temple will give out magical equipment to its elite members. It can be said that the highest level of us Knights Templars are all powerhouses who came down from the Sacred Night Mountain. Long Houchen's big blue eyes suddenly lit up. Then what if all the magical beasts on the Sacred Night Mountain are tamed? Li Xian laughed and said, How can it be so easy? In our Knights Templars, it's already very good to have a few dozen knight under the age of 20 every year. At the very least, there aren't even 10. Moreover, there is a big summoning spell on the sacred Night Mountain. It seems to be connected to a special place and summon magical beasts every once in a while. Therefore, there is no shortage of magical beasts on the sacred Night Mountain. It's said that there are even 9th-level magical beasts on the sacred mountain. If you can have a 9th-level magical beast as a mount, it's almost equivalent to opening the path to at least a 7th-order profession. Long Houchen asked, "Sister, then what's the level of your rose unicorn?" Li Xian said proudly, "My rose is currently a low-tier level, 5 magical beast, but it's still growing. When it matures, it will at least be a low-tier level 7 existence, which is equivalent to a 6th-order profession. In the future, I will at least become a 6th-order Radiance Knight. You have to work hard, okay? All right, I'll work hard with climbing the sacred mountain as my goal." The following mission was simple. With the protection of Li Xian, a true knight who had climbed the sacred Night Mountain, hunting 10 mid-tier level 2 magical beasts was not a difficult task for Long Houchen, who was already a quasi-knight and had divine block. In just half a day, the mission was completed. After handing in 10 magical beast cores, he received 25 gold coins as a reward and registered the first mission on the adventurer's certificate. Sometimes, fate between people was a very wonderful thing. Li Xian liked this newly recognized younger brother very much. Not only did she follow him to complete the mission, but she also sent him all the way to the outskirts of Odin Town, which was more than 200 miles away from Haoyue City. Only then did the two reluctantly part ways. It was close to evening. Long Houchen looked at the sunset that dyed the distant sky red, and he couldn't help but reveal a proud smile. "Teacher gave me 2 days to complete this mission, and I only used 1 day to complete it. I'll go home to see my mother first, and I'll go back to the mountain tomorrow morning to surprise teacher." As he thought about it, he happily walked in the direction of his home. However, his mind was filled with the figure of the rose unicorn that floated like a red cloud. How great would it be if he could have such a magical beast as a mount in the future? Long Houchen knew very well that if Li Xian rode on her unicorn during the prospective night assessment, he probably wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. With envy in his heart, he soon saw his own thatched cottage. In order to give his mother a surprise, he gently pushed open the courtyard door. However, when he took a step into the courtyard, his whole body froze. His dark blue eyes instantly became dull, and even his whole body couldn't help but tremble. Long Houchen's mental strength was different from ordinary people, so he had a much more stable and calm mentality than his peers. However, at this moment, he couldn't control his emotions at all. The scene in front of him was too unbelievable. Bai Yu was in the courtyard, but she was sitting on the lap of a man. And this man was second only to his mother in Long Houchen's life. In just a year, he had promoted him from a squire knight to a prospective knight, his teacher, Xingyu. Yu. Long Houchen stood there, speechless. At this moment, his mind was blank. Chun. Bai Yu struggled to sit up in Xingyu's arms, but Xingyu hugged her. A faint white light flashed, and Bai Yu seemed to be unable to move, and couldn't even speak. Xingyu stood up and put Bai Yu aside, then stared coldly at Long Houchen. Why did you bully my mother?" Long Houchen screamed hysterically. With a clang, he pulled out a pair of fine iron swords. His eyes turned red. Xingyu flipped his wrist. No one knew how he did it, but a bamboo sword appeared in his right hand. His left hand was behind his back, and the tip of the sword was pointed to the ground. He said calmly, "Do it." Long Houchen's original excitement was now gone. Despair, pain, hatred, and all sorts of negative emotions were surging. Long Houchen screamed and charged at Xingyu. This time, he didn't use any technique. He raised both swords at the same time and slashed at Xingyu with all his might. He didn't know how strong Xingyu was, but he was sure that he was no match for his teacher. But his teacher had bullied his mother, and the two people he loved the most in his heart had such a thing happen. He didn't have half a shred of rationality left. Bang! Xingyu's bamboo sword swept across, and Long Haochen flew backwards as if he had crashed into a mountain, landing in the courtyard. Is this what I taught you? No matter who you face, even if it's me, you have to remain calm, Xingyu said calmly. Long Haochen didn't listen to his lecture at this time. He rolled on the ground and climbed up again. At this moment, he felt a betrayal in his heart, and all the blood in his body seemed to be on fire. He charged again without hesitation. Pure white blade, sudden stab. Along with the charge, he launched his strongest attack. But it was still useless. Xingyu used the same level of spiritual energy as Long Haochen, and he only had a bamboo sword in his hand. But it was this thin bamboo sword that easily pierced the weakest part of Long Haochen's iron swords. The bamboo sword struck Long Haochen's hands one after the other. The iron swords fell to the ground with two thuds. Long Haochen also fell backwards, sitting on his butt. He didn't give up. Pain was the source of his persistence. Even without a weapon, Long Haochen charged at Xingyu like a mad tiger. Xingyu frowned slightly. The bamboo sword pointed forward, heading straight for Long Haochen's chest. But Long Haochen didn't even dodge, and directly collided with the edge of the sword. Xingyu was shocked. Although it was only a bamboo sword, it was still sharp. If Long Haochen collided with it without any protective gear, even if he didn't die, he would be heavily injured. The bamboo sword instinctively retracted, and Long Haochen had already collided with him. Without hesitation, Long Haochen bit Xingyu's arm. With Xingyu's level of cultivation, it was easy to shake him off, but he didn't move. He let Long Haochen's teeth sink into his flesh, and only frowned slightly. Long Haochen cried as he sensed the familiar scent on Xingyu's body. Tears flowed down uncontrollably. He abruptly let go of Xingyu's hand and looked at the bloody wound on Xingyu's arm. He screamed hoarsely, "Why? Why don't you kill me?" "Because I'm your father." It was a simple sentence, but it made Long Haochen's face freeze with grief and anger. His entire body maintained its previous position, and his eyes stared straight at Xingyu. What did you say?" The sluggishness in Long Haochen's eyes gradually turned into disbelief. Long Xingwu sighed softly, took a step forward, and pulled him into his arms, hugging him tightly. "I said, I'm your father, the father you've never met. Xingyu is my name, and you'll take my surname." "We're both surnamed Long." As he spoke, a white light shot out from his hand, and undid the seal on Baiyu's body. Baiyu quickly rushed forward, and pulled Long Haochen from Long Xingwu's arms into her own, and glared at him angrily. "Are you crazy? You scared me to death just now." Long Xingwu smiled bitterly. "I just wanted to test if Long Haochen could keep his cool in battle, but it looks like you're his biggest weakness." "Mother, he really is?" By now, Long Haochen had already reacted, and all his negative emotions turned into shock. He stared at his mother with his big green eyes. Baiyu nodded gently. "I'm sorry, Chen. Mother didn't tell you, but a year ago, your father found us. He hoped that you could become a strong knight like him, so he asked me to hide the news of his return with him." Long Xingwu shook his head helplessly. "I didn't expect that. Man proposes, God disposes, and he still found out. I was afraid that after you knew I was your father, you wouldn't work so hard, and I was also afraid that I wouldn't be able to harden my heart to train you." Long Haochen stared blankly at his parents in front of him. The word father was too foreign in his life. For as long as he could remember, he only had his mother by his side. Baiyu gently stroked his son's head, and tears flowed uncontrollably. "I'm sorry, Chen. Mother never told you in the past. 10 years ago, Mother encountered a particularly painful matter, and I didn't know how to face your father, so I left my home and came here alone. At that time, I found out that I already had you. Don't blame your father, it's all my fault, making him search bitterly for 9 years before he found us. If you want to hate someone, hate mother. Long Xingwu came to the mother and son's side with a complicated expression and softly said, It's all in the past. All the pain has gone far away from us. Don't think about those painful memories anymore, okay? Bai Yu gently nodded with tears in her eyes and choked with sobs. A year ago I promised you, for Haochen, I will break free from that unbearable memory. In the future, there will only be you in my life. These years, Haochen and I have suffered a lot. To be honest, I really don't want him to become a knight like you, I just want him to live a peaceful life. Long Xingwu frowned, and a complicated expression flashed in his eyes. He subconsciously clenched his fists, as if his heart was struggling. At this time, Long Haochen also gradually woke up, and looked at his mother, and then at his father, gradually revealed a fiery emotion. No, mother, I want to become a knight. To be a powerful knight. Long Xingwu was startled, and in that moment, he really hesitated, wondering if he was doing the right thing. He was very clear, whether it was for Bai Yu or for Long Haochen, living a peaceful life was obviously the best choice. Long Xingwu smiled bitterly. Are you willing to accept me as an irresponsible father? No, it's not that you are irresponsible, it's all my fault, it's all my fault. Bai Yu's tears, which had just stopped, suddenly flowed again. Father. Struggling out of his mother's embrace, Long Haochen threw himself into Long Xingwu's arms. At this moment, he felt a great sense of happiness wash over him. He was just a child, a 10-year-old child. Although he had never told Bai Yu, every time he saw his friends in Odin Town with his father, how could he not be envious? At this moment, his father was back, and it was not because of his father that they had been separated for so many years. His father was stronger than all his friends, and was a powerful knight. Long Haochen did not have any resistance in his heart, and all the anger from before had turned into joy. Hearing this call, Long Xingwu did not show too much excitement. He stood there in a daze, and then used his firm arms to slowly pull his wife and son into his arms. Neither Bai Yu nor Long Haochen noticed that he seemed to be still suppressing some kind of emotion at this time. After a day of running, coupled with the great joy and sorrow after returning home, Long Haochen went to bed early. This was also the first time in a year that he did not spend the night in meditation and really fell asleep. Long Xingwu hugged Bai Yu and sat next to his son. You. Bai Yu nodded lightly and closed her eyes. You don't need to say anything. Chunchen is like you, destined not to be able to live in peace. You were born to do great things. Since he has already chosen, I can only support him. I only have one request, and that is for him to live well. No matter what you teach him, he must focus on protecting himself, okay? I promise you. Long Xingwu nodded lightly, and stroked Bai Yu's long hair. The next morning, Long Xingwu brought Bai Yu and Long Haochen back to the wooden house at the top of the mountain. Their identities had already been exposed, and there was no need to hide anything. Bai Yu went to tidy up Long Haochen's room, while Long Xingwu called his son in front of him. Long Haochen, although you already know about our relationship, you have also made the choice to continue cultivating with me. Since that is the case, my requirements for you will only be stricter than before. You have one last chance to make a choice. Long Haochen said without hesitation, Dad, I understand. You are strict with me for my own good. This time, when I went to Haoyue City, I had a particularly obvious feeling. Dad, are you a higher level knight than a Radiance Knight? Long Xingwu was stunned. After hesitating for a moment, he nodded to Long Haochen. Wow, that's great. Long Haochen jumped up excitedly. Dad, I will definitely be a great knight like you in the future. Long Xingwu smiled and said, How do you know that Dad is a great knight? Long Haochen stubbornly said, It must be. Long Xingwu said, All right, you will know in the future whether Dad is great or not. But if you want to be a great knight, then you can't slack off even a little bit. From today onwards, you don't have to go to the owl ant cave anymore. Your cultivation method will be completely changed. I don't have to go? Although he had been there for a year, Long Houchen still had quite a shadow over that dark world. Long Xingwu nodded and said, "In the past year, your cultivation was mainly to train your reflexes, stimulate the growth of your spiritual power, and improve your body. The medicinal bath you soaked in every day was mainly for this purpose. Now that your external spiritual power has increased to more than 100, it is time to start cultivating your internal spiritual power." Internal spiritual power? Long Houchen looked at his father doubtfully. In the past year, Long Xingwu had told him almost exclusively about history, knight skills, and various other knowledge. He had not mentioned anything about spiritual power. Chapter 6. Long Xingwu said, "Spiritual power is divided into external and internal. External spiritual power refers to the changes and improvements in your own body. Simply put, through physical training, your body's strength and flexibility reach a certain level. However, there is a limit to just increasing your physical strength. This limit is 200 spiritual power. I've told you before, for any profession, from rank 2 to rank 3 is a watershed. Most people will never be able to break through rank 2 and enter rank 3. From our knight's point of view, it's because we can't cultivate internal spiritual power, and from a magician's point of view, it's because we can't guide the natural elements for our own use. Although there is still room for improvement in your external spiritual power, if you wait until your external spiritual power reaches 200 before cultivating internal spiritual power, you'll only get half the result with twice the effort. Previously, I had you meditate for a year to prepare for your internal spiritual power. As your internal spiritual power increases, your body's strength will also increase. To evaluate a true expert's total spiritual power, we don't take into account the amplification of skills, internal and external spiritual power. Give me the stone of awakening you brought back from the Haoyue temple." Long Xingwu extended his hand to Long Houchen. Long Houchen hurriedly handed the yellow stone to his father. Long Xingwu said, "In the next 2 years, I will teach you to cultivate internal spiritual power, and at the same time, cultivate external spiritual power to the peak. Learn the mysteries of the spiritual stove. But before that, I will complete the most solemn ceremony for us knight, the Holy Awakening." Long Houchen listened attentively. This morning, he woke up from his sleep very early. At that time, he secretly swore that he would not let his father worry about things happen, and that he would train even harder than before, not letting his father's painstaking efforts down. Long Xingwu continued, "From a certain point of view, us knight cultivators belong to the category of magic and martial arts. Martial arts are the various techniques and methods of using spiritual power that I've taught you, including internal spiritual power in the future. As for us, we only have one type of magic attribute, which is the holy light attribute. The awakening stone I asked you to bring back can change anyone's attribute to light. The stronger one's innate spiritual power was, and the more one's physique leaned towards light, the better the effect of the awakening. But our knight's holy light magic is different from a magician's magic. Mages use their understanding of the magical elements, but we use our own spiritual energy to activate and stimulate the power of light. We, the Knights Templars, call this method of using the power of faith. In reality, the more profound the knight's comprehension of the 10 great laws, the more powerful his holy light magic would be. Do you understand?" Long Houchen thought for a moment and said, "Dad, does that mean that as long as our knight diligently cultivates his inner spiritual energy, he will be able to use martial arts and holy light magic in 2 different forms?" Hearing this, Long Xingwu was shocked. He never expected Long Houchen to comprehend it so quickly. "Yes, you can understand it this way. Our knight's spiritual energy is the source of our martial arts, and also the source of our magic. In this aspect, they were completely different from the unconventional magic warriors among the warriors who were unable to make a name for themselves. Alright, now I'm going to start the awakening for you. Follow me outside. As he said this, Long Xingwu brought Long Haochen out of the wooden house and arrived at the top of the mountain. With a simple wave of his left hand, a layer of deep golden light spread out from Long Xingwu's body. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a golden light shield that was 15 feet tall and 10 feet in diameter, enveloping both father and son. The rich aura of light seemed to have cleansed Long Haochen's soul in an instant. Bathed in this golden light, he felt as if everything about him was being sublimated. The holy aura released by Lin Xin when she used the rising formation was like a firefly compared to the golden light shield that Long Xingwu casually released. It was like comparing a haoyue to a firefly. This is light's protection, a type of high-grade defensive skill of the night. Long Haochen, close your eyes and focus on guarding your body. No matter what you feel from now on, you have to stay calm and quietly feel the changes in your body. Especially the understanding of light, understand? Yes. Long Xingwu looked at his son in front of him, took a deep breath, and slowly raised the stone of awakening in his right hand. He did not tell Long Haochen that compared to the normal night's holy awakening, Long Haochen had to endure much more pain. This was because his spiritual energy had not reached 110 points. Compared to those who reached the peak of the night before they could awaken as a knight, one could imagine the burden on his body. Of course, this could also maximize the potential of Long Haochen's light. According to the rules of the Knights Templars, this kind of premature awakening was strictly forbidden. This was because it was feared that the knight would suffer from side effects. If the awakening failed, it could even be life-threatening. Of course, Long Xingwu was not gambling with Long Haochen's life. No one knew the secrets of the holy awakening better than him. The rules of the Knights Templars were meaningless to Long Xingwu. Long Haochen had spiritual energy far beyond that of ordinary people. At the same time, he had a pure, kind, and flawless heart. On top of that, he had mastered most of the 10 rules of the night. With Long Xingwu's precise control, success was almost certain. However, Long Haochen would definitely suffer a considerable amount of pain. A dazzling golden light shone on Long Xingwu's hand. The dazzling light almost instantly surpassed the light of the sun in the sky. However, this light did not leak out. It was completely blocked by the light's protection within the range of the light barrier. At this moment, the figures of Long Xingwu and his son could no longer be seen in the light barrier. Long Haochen suddenly felt that his body had become hot. At the same time, a warm current rose in his body. It was as if a sun had suddenly appeared in his internal organs. The crystal-clear feeling made him instantly realize that there seemed to be countless channels in his body, and each channel was an extension of the sun's light in his body. With his eyes closed, he saw a bright gold. This was the gold in his body. At this moment, an intense pain appeared. A layer of faint gray gas was discharged from Long Haochen's pores. With a poof, it disappeared in the golden light. That was the impurities in his body. It was also the purification effect of the holy awakening. At the moment of purification, Long Haochen only felt as if his body was pierced by thousands of sharp arrows. At the same time, the burning feeling also became more intense. Holy awakening did not only allow the knight to have the process of converting spiritual energy into holy light energy to cast magic. At the same time, it was also a process of cleansing the knight's soul and body. Among the knight who went through the holy awakening process, there were very few who betrayed their faith. This was also the reason why Long Haochen's body was trembling violently. If someone could see the situation inside the light's protection, they would see that at this moment, there were traces of blood steaming out of Long Haochen's pores. However, it was also during this process that a circle of golden light gradually appeared on his chest, and it was becoming more and more intense. Hold on, for our faith, for everything that we protect in our hearts. Long Xingwu's voice clearly appeared in Long Haochen's mind, causing his spirit, which was gradually becoming numb in the pain, to suddenly be refreshed. The stone of awakening in Long Xingwu's hand quietly melted and was continuously refined in his hand. In the end, it turned into a drop of pure golden liquid, which floated to the center of Long Haochen's chest. Compared to an ordinary night's awakening, with Long Xingwu's purification, this drop of holy liquid did not have the slightest bit of impurities. With just a flash of golden light, it entered Long Haochen's body. Poof! The moment the holy liquid entered Long Haochen's body, a dense golden light had already gushed out from the top of his head. The golden light struck the light's protection and slowly fell back to the top of Long Haochen's head, then climbed up bit by bit. Long Xingwu's gaze was nervously fixed on this golden pillar of light. This pillar of light would determine Long Haochen's future achievements in the holy realm of light. During the holy awakening, a knight would possess their own holy light attribute inner spiritual energy. The amount of innate inner spiritual energy that appeared during the awakening process was an important measure of a knight's potential. Normally, if the innate inner spiritual energy did not exceed 10, then the knight would never be able to break through to the third rank. The moment the golden light above Long Haochen's head rose up again after it fell back down, it had already surpassed the spiritual energy level of 10. Although his body was still trembling violently in pain, the speed of the golden light's increase was extremely shocking. 10, 20, 30, 40, when the spiritual energy rushed past 40, Long Xingwu could not help but clench his fists. An innate inner spiritual energy of over 40 was already a rare genius among the Knights Templars. However, the golden pillar of light did not show any signs of stopping. What a strong innate spiritual energy! Long Xingwu could not help but exclaim in his heart. Even though he had already felt that Long Haochen's innate spiritual energy was abnormal, he could not make a true judgment before the holy awakening. It was only now that he could truly see how strong Long Haochen's innate spiritual energy was. 50, more than 50. 55, 58, 60. It had actually exceeded 60. Long Xingwu could still clearly remember that when he, who was known as the #1 genius among the Knights Templars in 100 years, went through the holy awakening, his innate inner spiritual energy was 77. Although Long Haochen had the foundation of meditating under his guidance for the past year, Long Haochen still had a lot of experience. However, having an innate inner spiritual energy of over 60 meant too many things. Moreover, the golden pillar of light was still climbing. 65, 67, it was already 67. Long Xingwu's pupils contracted violently. Every 10 points of innate inner spiritual energy was a level. If Long Haochen's innate inner spiritual energy could exceed 70, then his ability to use holy light magic in the future would not be inferior to any pure light magician. 70, it was really 70. At this moment, Long Xingwu could not help but hold his breath. At the moment when Long Haochen's innate inner spiritual energy broke through 70, his body stopped trembling. With another poof, hundreds of golden lights shot out from Long Haochen's body. All the pain disappeared at this moment. The clothes on Long Haochen's body also disappeared in the golden light. His fair skin became transparent like crystal, and a faint golden light flowed, dyeing his entire body golden. The golden halo in the middle of Long Haochen's chest gradually shrank inwards, and finally became a golden ball of light the size of a soybean. Long Haochen felt even more strange. At the moment when his innate inner spiritual energy exceeded 70, he felt all the pain in his body disappear, and in its place was a feeling of clarity that connected heaven and earth. Everything became crystal clear, including his heart and his soul. The rich holy aura was subtly changing his original body. The innate inner spiritual energy was still rising, and Long Haochen seemed to have grasped something, the law of light. Oh my God! 80, his innate inner spiritual energy actually exceeded 80. This time, Long Xingwu's body was trembling. Although innate inner spiritual energy did not represent strength, it represented absolute potential. 81, 83, 85 The golden light was still rising. In the history of Knights Templars, there were 17 records of innate inner spiritual energy exceeding 70. Among these 17 people, except for the 6 who died midway, the rest all became the strongest Knight of the Seal. There were only 3 records of innate inner spiritual energy exceeding 80. Among these 3 Knight Templars, 2 died and only 1 grew smoothly. When he was 36 years old, he successfully broke through the threshold of rank 9 profession, 100,000 spiritual energy. He achieved God's seal. Oh my God! 90? Is that really 90? In the history of Knights Templars, there was only 1 innate inner spiritual energy exceeding 90. Long Xingwu's eyes were filled with shock. The purity of his heart, the extraordinary spiritual energy, and the understanding of the Knight's 10 laws made his innate inner spiritual energy reach such a terrifying level. The golden light seemed to have reached a bottleneck, and its rising speed was obviously much slower. It was just moving slowly, 1 thread at a time. Innate inner spiritual energy exceeding 70 was known as the Angel of Light constitution. Innate inner spiritual energy exceeding 80 was known as the Divine Protection constitution. As for innate inner spiritual energy exceeding 90, although it had never appeared in the history of Knights Templars, the ancestor who created the Knights Templars had left a record. This kind of constitution was known as the Child of Light. The possessor had the purest light constitution, and could use any light attribute weapon, and was close to all light attribute magical beast. Finally, the golden light could no longer continue rising, and it stopped at 97. Innate inner spiritual energy 97. All the golden light gradually faded, and the father and son appeared. So comfortable! The realization in his heart made Long Haochen wake up from the special light aura. When he opened his eyes, Long Haochen was surprised to see his father staring at him with a shocked expression. "Dad, what's wrong?" Long Haochen hurriedly asked. Long Xingwu's body trembled, and he came back to his senses. He immediately saw Long Haochen's eyes. Long Haochen's originally blue eyes had now become a strange light gold color. It wasn't that no one had light gold eyes, but it was the first time Long Xingwu saw a light gold color like Long Haochen's. The Child of Light, it's actually the Child of Light. God bless us humans, God bless us Knights Templars. Long Xingwu couldn't help but say with a slight tremble in his voice. As he spoke, he withdrew his light protection. "Dad, what's the Child of Light? Where are my clothes?" A mountain breeze blew past, and Long Haochen only felt a chill on his thighs. Only then did he realize that he was naked. He immediately cried out in surprise. Long Xingwu finally reacted, and with a shake of his right hand, a long robe of his appeared, covering Long Haochen's body. Looking closely at his son, Long Xingwu noticed that Long Haochen's skin seemed to have an additional layer of faint golden luster, which could only be seen under the sunlight. But strangely, his body didn't have the lingering aura of light that other knights would have after the holy awakening. Instead, the aura of light was completely restrained, not spilling out at all. Only that pair of eyes could tell that there was something special about him. Regarding the secret of the Child of Light, even among the Knights Templars, there were less than 10 who truly knew. Long Xingwu wasn't worried that his son's talent would be exposed. Long Haochen, your holy awakening has been completed. Your divine awakening has been completed. Do you know, the current you, with the addition of your internal and external spiritual power, is already equivalent to a real knight. That easy? Long Haochen was greatly surprised. At this moment, he could also feel that there seemed to be an additional warm current in his body, moving according to his will. Easy? A bitter smile appeared on Long Xingwu's face, and he thought to himself, "This kid is really a well-fed man who doesn't know the hunger of a starving man." Normally, when a knight's awakening had 20 innate internal spiritual energy, it would be praiseworthy to the god of light. Your talent is very good, but this is only brought about by the holy awakening. And in your future cultivation, you still need to put in a lot of effort to be able to reach the next level. Understand? Let's go back and talk. Dad, I will definitely work hard. Bai Yu stood not far away, watching this scene silently. Seeing Long Xingwu holding Long Haochen in his arms as they walked back to the wooden hut, her face rippled with a trace of a smile. She didn't know martial arts, but she understood her husband. She clearly saw the shock on Long Xingwu's face. Her husband was so powerful, yet he was shocked by his son's talent. It seemed that Qinchin's choice to walk the path of a knight was the right choice. However, if one day they really had to face that person, back in the wooden hut, Long Haochen first changed into a set of coarse cloth clothes, then continued to listen to Long Xingwu's teachings. Long Xingwu said in a low voice, "Now tell me your choice. Guardian or punishment?" Long Haochen didn't hesitate and said firmly, "Dad, I want to be a guardian knight." Guardian knight? Long Xingwu was stunned for a moment. Are you willing to give up the powerful attack and individual strength of a punishment knight? Long Haochen insisted, "Dad, you said that fighting against the demons is a matter for all of us. The power of a single person is ultimately insignificant. If I can become a guardian knight, I can better protect the people I want to protect. At the same time, I can also help more people survive on the battlefield." Long Xingwu was obviously disappointed, and he sighed. However, in the end, those who can challenge the 72 demon god pillars are human powerhouses with the strongest individual strength. Long Haochen asked subconsciously, "Then can't a guardian knight challenge the demon god pillars?" Hearing this, Long Xingwu's eyes suddenly lit up. Yes. Innate internal spiritual power of 97, the wholly awakened Son of Light has enough spiritual power. Why can't he learn more things? Punishment and guardian are just two categories. Perhaps you can create a miracle. Dual cultivation may be the best choice, to truly unleash the talents of the Son of Light. Long Haochen seemed to understand something, and said with a surprised expression, "Dad, you mean I should cultivate the abilities and techniques of both the Punishment Knight and the Destruction Knight?" "That's right. From now on, I will teach you the cultivation method of the Punishment Knight, and 2 years later, you can go to the Haoyue branch to cultivate the Guardian Knight's profound meaning. Perhaps this will slow down the speed of your spiritual power growth. However, as long as you can fuse Punishment and Guardian together, you will definitely become an unprecedentedly powerful knight in the future." Time passed day by day, and the knight's inheritance continued on this peaceful peak of Odin Mountain. In the blink of an eye, a year and a half had passed. Clang! With a crisp sound, a layer of golden light suddenly shone from the young man's body. Then, a brilliance as bright as the sun erupted and condensed into a blade of light that pierced through the air. The bamboo sword swung lightly, but the golden blade of light shattered in front of the small bamboo sword. "Not bad, your glorious sun slash has basically reached the essence. The only thing you're lacking is mastery and spiritual power growth." It was Long Xingwu who used the bamboo sword to block the dazzling blade of light, and the young man who used the blade of light was naturally Long Haochen. After a year and a half, Long Haochen was almost 12 years old. Compared to when he was still living in Odin Town, the current him had undergone earth-shattering changes. He was only 12 years old, but he was already close to 1.6 meters tall. He didn't look robust, but his slender figure was perfectly proportioned. His black hair fluttered behind his head, and his crystal-clear golden eyes were like a mirror. His originally beautiful little face had already turned handsome, but it was still so perfect that it was breathtaking. His calm temperament matched with his figure. Even if he said he was 14 or 15 years old, people would definitely believe him. At this time, Long Haochen was holding a heavy sword in each hand. They were standard knight weapons, 6 feet long, 8 inches wide, and an astonishing 4 inches thick. These knight-heavy swords weighed more than 50 kilograms, but in his hands, they were as light as a feather. In a year and a half, Long Houchen had learned too much from his father. His internal spiritual power didn't increase by much, only from 97 to 120, but his external spiritual power had reached the peak of a rank 3 knight, a whole 200. Adding the two together, it was more than 320, which was already the standard of a rank 4 knight. It was almost the same as a rank 5 knight's 330 points of spiritual power. If it wasn't for Long Xingwu wanting to lay the most solid foundation for him, perhaps his speed of improvement would be even more terrifying. Even with Long Xingwu's strictness, looking at his 11.5-years-old son who was already a rank 4 knight, he also revealed a satisfied smile. In the history of Knights Templars, this was absolutely unprecedented. Even with his talent, he only reached this level of cultivation at the age of 15. However, as his external spiritual power reached its peak, the improvement of Long Houchen's spiritual power also slowed down. After all, he could only rely on improving his internal spiritual power to improve his cultivation, unless he could advance to the rank 4 Great Knight. Then he would be able to improve his external spiritual power again. Hearing his father's praise, Long Houchen couldn't help but show a bright smile. "Dad, this glorious sun strike is very powerful, but it also consumes 50 points of my internal spiritual power, and even my external spiritual power. My spiritual power is still too low." Long Xingwu smiled. "You're only 11 years old, you should know this glorious sun strike is originally a skill that only a great knight should be able to master. You can't rush your cultivation, you have to do it step by step. Alright, prepare your defense, let's see how long you can last today." Hearing his father's words, Long Houchen suddenly became serious. His hands that were holding the sword unconsciously tightened. Long Xingwu moved. His body seemed to be weightless. In just a flash, the bamboo sword in his hand was already in front of Long Houchen. With a light flick of the heavy sword in his left hand, Long Houchen quickly took a step back, at the same time deflecting the attack of the bamboo sword. It was obvious that Long Xingwu's bamboo sword did not contain any spiritual power. However, in the next moment, countless bamboo shadows appeared around Long Houchen's body like flowing mercury. Long Xingwu had already disappeared. Only the endless bamboo shadows were stabbing at Long Houchen from all directions from all kinds of tricky angles. But Long Houchen seemed to be used to this kind of situation. The double swords in his hands danced back and forth. Their speed was not slow at all. The sound of the swords was like the sound of rain hitting the banana leaves. Long Houchen used the blade, the ridge of the sword, and even the hilt, every part of the heavy sword in his hand, to block the bamboo sword's attack. For a moment, the sword shadows flashed, enveloping his whole body like a huge ball of light. Holy light energy constantly bloomed, complementing his double swords in defense. With this kind of attack from Long Xingwu, as long as Long Houchen showed the slightest opening, the bamboo sword would immediately fall on him, and it was many times more powerful than the owl-ant charge. But what was strange was that Long Houchen was able to block it just like that. Although he had a serious expression on his face, it seemed that Long Xingwu was unable to break through Long Houchen's defense without using his spiritual power. After a quarter of an hour, Long Xingwu's bamboo sword suddenly lit up, and a dot of white light instantly expanded. The 1,000 swords became one, and pointed at Long Houchen. Long Houchen was still brandishing his double swords. He was far from being at the level of Long Xingwu, but it was clearly not the first time he encountered this kind of situation. The heavy sword in his left hand knocked against the heavy sword in his right hand, and the heavy sword in his right hand immediately blocked in front of his chest. At the same time, the long sword in his left hand swung out, and with a flash of golden light, a sudden stab hit the bamboo sword. There was a soft clang, and the heavy sword in his left hand knocked against the heavy sword in his right hand, and the heavy sword in his right hand immediately blocked in front of his chest. At the same time, the long sword in his left hand swung out, and with a flash of golden light, a sudden stab hit the bamboo sword. There was a crisp clang, and a layer of golden light immediately rippled on Long Houchen's body. It was the divine defense. The spiritual power used in this stab of Long Xingwu could only be blocked by the divine defense. Very good. Not bad this time. To be able to turn movement into stillness, every day of actual combat has not been in vain. Withdrawing the bamboo sword, Long Xingwu smiled at Long Houchen and nodded. On the other hand, Long Houchen was panting, and his clothes were already soaked in sweat. Even if his father didn't use any spiritual power to attack, he still felt a great deal of pressure. Long Xingwu walked to Long Houchen's side, put his arm around his son's shoulder, and said with a smile, "Go back and rest for a while. Your mother should be preparing lunch soon." Okay. Long Houchen's face was also full of smiles. Although he had been training hard every day for the past year and a half, this was the happiest year and a half of his life. His mother's face was full of smiles every day, and he had a powerful father to guide him. Not only did this kind of life not feel boring, but it was also full of happiness. Just as the father and son were about to walk into the wooden house, Long Xingwu suddenly stopped in his tracks, and a fierce light appeared in his eyes. Long Houchen also felt the change in his father's aura. That terrifying pressure like that of an ancient dragon made him a little breathless. Long Xingwu let go of Long Houchen's hand, and slowly turned around, the tip of his foot lightly touching the ground. In the next moment, Long Houchen was dumbfounded to see an intense golden flame spew out from his father's body, pushing his body into the sky. Although he had been training with his father for more than 2 years, Long Houchen still didn't know the true extent of his father's strength. At this moment, seeing his father soar in the sky with just spiritual power was too shocking for him. At the same time, 2 golden lights shot out of Long Xingwu's eyes, and he looked in the direction of Odin Town. Before Long Houchen could recover from his shock, Long Xingwu had already floated down to the ground in the next moment, and his eyes were completely icy cold. "Demons, a sneak attack team has invaded. Let's go." While saying that, he grabbed Long Houchen's arm and soared into the sky again. In the next moment, a pair of huge golden wings formed from spiritual energy unfurled behind Long Xingwu's back. Spiritual power wings were the hallmark of a rank 6 Radiance Knight. But the wings on Long Xingwu's back were more than 10 meters wide when fully extended, and the golden feathers on them were as fine as real objects. They were not as simple as ordinary spiritual power wings. The huge wings unfolded, and a golden light enveloped Long Xingwu and his son. With a sudden flap of the wings, the father and son immediately flew toward Odin Town like a golden meteor. What Long Houchen couldn't see was that the moment Long Xingwu unfolded his wings, all the beasts in Mount Odin and the nearby forest, be they magical beasts or wild beasts, were prostrated on the ground, terrified and despairing, not daring to move at all. A golden world appeared before his eyes, and rich holy energy enveloped him. Long Houchen felt as if the spiritual power in his body was boiling. In a short time, his inner spiritual power had at least doubled. Of course, this was only temporary. It was a temporary increase due to the surrounding energy of the same attribute being too powerful. But this also showed how powerful the holy energy released by Long Xingwu was. After what seemed like only a few seconds, the golden light suddenly dispersed, and Long Houchen could see the situation outside again. Odin Town. They had actually returned to Odin Town. In just a few blinks of an eye? Long Houchen couldn't believe his eyes, but the facts were right in front of him. Wasn't it Odin Town, where he had lived since childhood? Odin Town had completely lost its original peace and tranquility. Fires were burning in many places, and cries, screams, and the rumbling of destruction filled every corner of Odin Town. Long Houchen saw at least 1,000 tall and strong monsters in black armor. They were wreaking havoc in Odin Town. These monsters were at least one. 8 meters tall, with the head of a wolf and the body of a human. They brandished scimitars in their hands, and the townspeople of Odin town were screaming miserably under their slaughter. And their ferocious howls kept ringing out. Odin town, which had more than 3,000 households, had nearly 20,000 people living, but at this moment, it had already become a sea of blood and mountains of corpses. The thick smell of blood was constantly rising from below, making one feel nauseous. "Daddy, what are they?" Long Houchen's voice was trembling with anger. This was the place where he had grown up. He had seen with his own eyes that a friend of his had just been cut in two by the scimitars of the wolf-headed men, the front half of his body still lying on the ground in pain, but his internal organs were scattered all over the ground. "Demons, werewolves!" Long Xingwu's voice was like ice from the depths of hell, and a powerful pressure burst forth from his body at this moment. The werewolves below felt the terrifying pressure in the air, and subconsciously looked up. Seeing Long Xingwu with his huge wings spread, they couldn't help but reveal a look of shock in their eyes. "Daddy, let me down, I want to kill them," Long Houchen shouted excitedly. "Your strength is far from enough," Long Xingwu said in a low voice. "Long Houchen, haven't you always wanted to see Daddy's strength? Well then, watch carefully." A golden red ring of light shone behind Long Xingwu, and a huge dazzling golden throne slowly appeared from within the ring of light.